seats went into election, because one of the seats elections have been put on hold because there has been one of the candidates, sitting candidates, they passed away from the UDP. I want to cut across right now to Rahul Srivastav, who's joining us as we continue to beam you live visuals coming in from the Bharatiya Janata Party headquarters. Rahul, I'm sure you've been watching the elections very closely. It's been a fabulous day at the hustings for the Bharatiya Janata Party. Comfortably home in Tripura, and even with 3 seats back into an alliance which was really acrimonious in the last campaign period of the last 1 month in Meghalaya.
If we look at the picture of these small northeast states, you see that what these results do to the BJP, that the BJP cadres get a signal that it is still a winning machinery led by a set of leaders who they can rely on. Because if you see the picture of Northeast, if the BJP and Conrad Sangma's party do come together, eventually form the government, the BJP will have its fingers in power in all 8 Northeast states. That's not a small thing, because before 2014, the BJP
Sangma has already spoken with Amit Shah, as confirmed by Himanta Biswa Sarma. They're coming together.
Yes, Nadda has already signaled, but I'm saying if and when they take oath, because in politics I always keep that little room for caution. So I say that when the government is formed, eventually BJP will have its fingers in 8 states, all of them in the Northeast. Compared to that, if we are looking at challengers, and that's what we have been discussing for the last few days, the CPM vote share has fallen tragically from 42% odd to 24% this time around. And that's a very, very serious loss. The number of seats should not be worrying the CPM. It is the loss of the amount of vote it has lost. The Congress party again has flopped. The flop of the Congress party means yet again in a region where it used to be a very dominant force, the Congress has not been able to make its mark. Then the expansion plans of Mamata Banerjee. Mamata Banerjee was hoping that after failing in Goa to create any kind of positive waves for the party, both in Meghalaya and in Tripura especially, where Meghalaya and Tripura especially, there's a large Bengali population. There was a sense of worry that the BJP may lose ground in case the TMC comes in. That's what initially what people were saying. But then there was also indication that the polarization of the tribal vote by the Motha eventually will lead to a polarization of the Bengali vote, and the BJP walked away with that vote. So the Trinamool Congress's expansion plans, though in small states in Northeast, even they have suffered a setback. So the BJP, the small losses, the Deputy Chief Minister in Tripura losing, some seats lost, not major ground won in Meghalaya despite contesting 60 or 59 odd seats. The fact remains that the BJP is still a winning force. I think that comparison actually creates positive news for Mr. Modi when he comes to deliver his victory speech at the BJP headquarters.
You're right there. It's fabulous politics in terms where the BJP comes into play, and these optics are not lost in anyone. It's the beginning of the year. It's come at the back of Gujarat, and another emphatic win in Tripura. You're already going to be in governance where Meghalaya and Nagaland are concerned. And this is just the beginning of what is a blockbuster election here, viewers. Rahul, I'm just going to take the opportunity to introduce our political guests also. I have Sanju Verma, National Spokesperson, Bharatiya Janata Party. I have Aishwarya Mahadev, Spokesperson, Congress, and Dr. Shantanu Sen, Rajya Sabha MP TMC. Dr. Shantanu said, I'd want to begin with you, and it's interesting because so much was said about the TMC trying to make a foray where Meghalaya and Tripura was concerned. If it was a trial by fire for the BJP in Tripura to hold on to what was called an inorganic growth and hold on to its vote bank, it was an acid test for you too, where Meghalaya was concerned. If you're going to come down to the national stage and demand that you want to be at the forefront of the opposition unity that we keep talking about, you had to expand your footprint when it came down to the Northeast. You are right now sitting at just 5 seats where Meghalaya is concerned. You haven't even opened account in Tripura.
See, we are very much happy with the result of Meghalaya. During campaigning also, we have said that we are being bestowed upon by the blessings and supports of the people of Meghalaya at large, and we have said that we will be a deciding factor in formation of government, And if you go through the vote percentage, you will see we have got significant number of vote out there, and we have won 5 seats when BJP has won only 3 seats. So definitely Trinamool Congress has made a footprint over the soil of Meghalaya.
Mr. Sen, I just want to come in and maybe, one would suggest that there's a bit of disillusionment attached to all of this. And why I say that is, you were overnight the principal opposition when it came down to 14 of the Congress MLAs defecting to you. You have Mukul Sangma, who's lost on both his seats. His entire family has lost, sir. And he was your leader where Tripura was concerned. So wrong choices maybe. And who has this election been fought under the banner? Are we going to pin the blame on a Mukul Sangma, or is it going to be an Abhishek Banerjee?
Our leader Abhishek Banerjee has categorically made the concept of a party out there in Meghalaya. Now you see the policy of BJP. Few days back, Amit Shah and JP Nadda, they criticized the party which was their ally once upon a time as the most corrupt political party, and now they have started saying that they are their younger brother. This is the basic policy of Bharatiya Janata Party. Just to grab power.
But Mr. Sen, that's irrelevant. Right now that's irrelevant. The conversation is not about the BJP. I'll take that question to Sanju Verma when her time comes. But the fact is, for the TMC, this was supposed to be a moment of going big on the national stage by expanding your footprint, not just in Meghalaya, but also in Tripura. But once again, I'll come right back to you. I want to take you through the visuals that are coming in at the BJP headquarters again. Live visuals, of course, these are old ones. We're going to try and play fresh visuals for you. But if we have Sanju Verma with us. Okay, we don't have Sanju Verma, but all right, let's cut across to Aishwarya Mahadev. Aishwarya, the sad part is there is really nothing that the Congress can look at as a silver lining, but possibly just the bypolls in Maharashtra. And, what does it come down to? One rally is what your leader, Rahul Gandhi, did in Meghalaya, one rally, while the Prime Minister himself did 3 rallies in just Tripura alone.
Good evening, Preeti. I think, yes, there are the bypoles that I think are slightly a silver lining. But before I answer your question, I think that the cadre on the ground, because we may have macro analysis of wins and losses, but especially in the Northeast, where the Congress over the years has seen defections, including in Meghalaya, where 12 of our 17 MLAs moved, and out of which only 5 have come to power now, become MLAs with the TMC. I think the fact is it is extremely hard to be a Congress worker today, especially in regions where you have no hope. But the fact that our cadre was still there, our cadre tried to fight, is something that is very appreciable. There have been times where political parties have 2 MPs. There are times where political parties...
Aishwarya Mahadev, you've abandoned your cadre. Many would suggest also the same. Did one of your leaders actually go to Tripura? No. Your top leadership that actually visited Tripura was Mr. Pawan Khera. No insult to that, but where were your top brass? Nowhere to be seen.
Preeti, to sit and quantify people at top brass and not is something very difficult to do here. And you saw Mr. Ajay Kumar there. You saw our EICC secretaries constantly there and working consistently. And I think whether you look at Mr. Rahul Gandhi's meetings or not, it was also Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge there. The Congress president has travelled. You've seen other leaders also move forth. I think that for us, again, understood, a defeat is a defeat. There are political equations in play where you're fighting each other 2 days previously and now you're all best friends. But I believe that the Congress will still continue to work in the places that we do have public representatives who have won in these elections. They will continue to work and our time will come. I have hope in that, and hope springs eternal, especially now for us.
It's just, it is a little amazing, Aishwarya, what I was telling the TMC, if there is a bit of disillusionment right now which comes in for the TMC, then it's the same thing with you as well. The sheer fact, 2018 you fall to 2% from 44% in 2013, and then in 2019 in the Lok Sabha you go up to 19% under Pradyut Dev Burman, and you let him go. You let him go. It's bizarre, and the fact is, the writing's on the wall, but the Congress seems to understand that. But I want to still now cut across I want to bring in Sanju Verma. I believe we finally have her. Sanju, congratulations. Emphatic win when it comes down to Tripura. Quite attuned to what our exit polls were. You didn't quite agree. The Tripura Bota has bang on come to the same point of what our exit polls predicted. But having said that, it's a good day at the hustings for the Bharatiya Janata Party. You've done phenomenally well in Tripura, held on to your vote base. In Meghalaya, even with 3 seats, you're going to be part of governance. Similarly, in Nagaland as well.
Preeti, thank you so much. And congratulations to, your team for getting the exit polls bang on target. I have to say this, I'm not going to today bicker about XYZ because to be very honest, Congress has ceased to be a party that matters in any electoral equation, point number 1. Point number 2, I think more than anything else, the Northeast election results today categorically, reflect the fact that the Modi magic works and how. Point number 3, Prime Minister Modi in the last 8.5, 9 odd years has visited Northeast more than all the prime ministers put together in post-independent India in the last 70 or 75 odd years. Point number 4, when you look at the Northeast, you can't look at just Assam or Meghalaya or Nagaland in isolation. You have to look at Northeast as a block. And I'm sure Rahul Srivastava, your colleague, who, knows more about politics than so many of us, he will agree that be it the NLFP agreement with Tripura and Mizoram in August 2019, be it the Brew Accord in January 2020, be it the Bodo Peace Accord in January 2020, be it the Karbi-Anglong Accord, be it the fact that more than 60% of the earlier areas which were categorized as disturbed areas are now out of the purview and ambit of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. I think these are things that have connected with the overall cadre on ground. And look at Nagaland, Preeti. More than 75% of the population is Christian and more than 90% are tribal. And this is a stinging slap on the face of those who said, oh, BJP is a party which can only win elections in the Hindi heartland. Well, there you have Nagaland tells you a story that when the Prime Minister talks of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas, this is not a jumla. This is not platitude. These are not mere slogans.
But Sanju Verma, you made your point. It's emphatic. But when we come down to Jumla and platitudes, we're going to talk about something else and how the politics played out in Meghalaya. But you've made a point and it's relevant, and I want to bring in Rahul Srivastava on it. Rahul, the fact is, the fact that you have the Prime Minister, and I've actually gone through both figures. The Northeast, he's visited the Northeast cumulative of all the Prime Ministers that we've had ever in his term. On the other hand, let's look at Tripura alone. The Prime Ministers visited Tripura, then say the UPA did from 2004 to 2014. The Prime Minister has done it twice as over, even more than that. So somewhere down the line, it seems that, this look east approach of the BJP has worked, blurring possibly, the proverbial far east to the mainland divide.
Absolutely. I think that is one reason. If you see that the governments in the past did have support from players in the Northeast, when the Congress, of course, was there, the fact remains that it is the BJP has looked into Northeast as a very different kind of an electoral territory and also an administrative territory. The kind of infrastructure development which is on now in, say, an Arunachal Pradesh, even in Assam and other places, the BJP has somebody like Hemant Biswa Sarma managing those Northeast states for them. The Congress and others never had that kind of formula, like having a unit there in Assam to look after the Northeastern states. I think that involvement of the Prime Minister and the presence, you see, it's when somebody talks about Meghalaya, and Tripura and Nagaland, we are talking about tribes. We are talking about tribal vote, and we are talking about Christians. And the BJP, if you realize, is in an alliance with players in Nagaland, will be with NPP in Meghalaya, a party which is not supposed to have a very positive strong footprint among the minorities in rest of the country. But still, with strategic alliances, the party is managing to convince the voters and the alliance partners.
Rahul, I'm
that
going to just intervene
game.
just about, and the reason I'm cutting you short is, of course, not just the BJP, making a push there, but also the work of the RSS over the last few decades. Having said that, we're going to come right back into this conversation. Let's quickly dip in for a short while. You have Dr. Jaishankar speaking at the G20. Listen in.
I think a lot of us, certainly in India, we can see the lighthouse shine quite brightly. We believe that for all the challenges in the world, there is the leadership, there is a vision, there are solutions, and much of that today forms the agenda of the G20. So it's my honor today to propose a vote of thanks. I particularly thank Prime Minister Meloni for joining us this evening. I thank the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji, for keeping his word year after year of being here. And to all of you, I wish you a very, very productive conference over the next few days. Thank you very much.
I will now request all of you to remain seated as the Honorable Prime Minister and the President of the Council of Ministers leave this room. I will
the Prime Minister now leaving Hyderabad House, where the Raisina dialogue is taking place. The keynote was delivered, of course, by the Italian Prime Minister, Ms. Giorgia Meloni. With these visuals, I'm going to slip into a quick break. We are back into our debate on the other side.
Thank you so much.
You are watching India Today.
India Today Conclave 2023, March 17th and 18th, New Delhi. Listen to S. Jaishankar, Shashi Tharoor, Justice U. Lalit, Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde, Sanjeev Goenka, Anil Agarwal. The India Moment.
Onions are proving to be a real tearjerker for farmers in Maharashtra. Prices have crashed from an average of 1,390 rupees per quintal last year to just 500 rupees this year. At the mandis in Nagpur and Nasik, the largest in the country when it comes to onion trade, farmers claim the current prices is not even enough to cover their input cost.
एक क्विंटल के हिसाब से 300 रुपये खर्चा आता है, मेरे हाथ में 400 रुपये पड़ेंगे सिर्फ। प्रॉफिट कुछ नहीं मिलेगा मेरे को। एकरी खर्च, एक एकड़ का खर्चा 50,000 रुपये, ट्रैक्टर का लागत का, लागवड़ का, मजूर का, और एक एकड़ को मेरा खर्चा भी नहीं छूटेगा। 30,000 रुपये एकरी आएगा, वो भी मेरी मजूरी भी नहीं आएंगी।
Many farmers are avoiding the drive to the mandis and instead choosing to destroy their crop by running tractor over them.
आपल्या जगाच्या पाठीवर भारत देश हा कृषीप्रधान देश आहे। मग कृषीप्रधान देशामध्ये शेतकऱ्यांना भिकाऱ्याची अवस्था असेल, मरायचं का वाचायचं हा प्रश्न आमच्या सर्व बांधवांना शेतकऱ्यांना झालेला आहे।
Why have the onion prices crashed? The sudden rise in temperatures from around the second week of Feb have forced farmers to sell more onions than they would have normally during this time. This is because the heat will damage their crop. While Maharashtra is the biggest producer of onions, the good monsoon meant more farmers in states like Karnataka, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh cultivated onion this time, leading to a glut in the market. Farmers also claim there are curbs on exports which are hurting them.
2 रुपयाचा चेक घेऊन काय करायचं साहेब? लोकांचं कर्ज आहे, शेतात इतका मोठा खर्च झालेला आहे. या खर्चात त्यांनी कसं काय त्यांचं सगळं उदरनिर्वाह करायचा? कुटुंब मोठं आहे, शेती कमी असल्यामुळं. तर आमचं एकच म्हणणं आहे की या ठिकाणी शेतकऱ्यांना न्याय मिळावा.
1 किलो प्याज बनाने को तैयार करने को किसानों को 15 से 18 रुपया खर्चा आता है और प्याज अभी 2 रुपया 3 रुपया किलो बिक रहा है.
Farmers are demanding that the government set a floor price of 1,000 per quintal for procurement of onions. Meanwhile, NAFED has issued a statement that it would open procurement centres in Nasik district. Farmers have been asked to bring their good quality and right stock to avail better rates at these centres. Bureau Report, India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
रुख जिंदगी ने मोड़ लिया कैसा, हमने सोचा नहीं था कभी ऐसा, आता नहीं यकीन क्या से क्या हो गया, किस तरह मैं तुमसे बेवफा हो गया.
This short video has made Amarjeet Jaikar an overnight internet sensation.
मेरे सामने थी जो वो गली जिसमें रहती थी एक परी, उस पे मैं मर मिट गया.
Jaikar, who lives in Bhavwa village in Samastipur district, has been singing for 7 years. After the new video went viral, Lady Luck has smiled on him. Bollywood actor Sonu Sood is giving Jaikar a chance in his film Fateh. Jaikar is also exploring other options.
मैं अपना चेहरा देखा करता हूँ. कहते ना कि एक बिहारी 100 पे भारी, तो एक चीज़ बहुत अच्छा सर ने लिखा था और मुझे ये नहीं पता था, मैं आपको कसम से बताऊं कि वायरल हो जाए मेरा वीडियो, ऐसा मेरा कुछ सोच नहीं था. बस ऐसा था कि फेसबुक जो होता है ना कुछ अर्निंग देता है, तो मुझे उसके बारे में पता चला, तो मैंने सोचा कि हाँ मैं वो करके अपना कुछ अच्छा कर पाऊँगा, तो बस करने लगा, वीडियो अपलोड करने. नेशनल लेवल में अभी मैंने राइजिंग स्टार, सारेगामापा, इंडियन आइडल में मेरा इस बार 2nd राउंड तक मेरा हुआ था, उसके बाद फिर मैं चला आया घर. आने वाला पल जाने वाला है, हो सके तो इसमें जिंदगी बिता दो, पल जो ये जाने वाला है.
Jaikar credits his teacher for his success.
पल
जाने वाला है।
हमारे विक्की भैया थे, तो मैंने इनको बोला भैया कि मैं भी गाता हूँ, कि आप मुझे सिखाइएगा। तो बोले नहीं नहीं नहीं, तुमसे कुछ नहीं होगा, ये सब जो करता है बड़ा घर का लड़का करता है, जो संगीतकार का बच्चा होता है वही करता है। बोले नहीं नहीं, हम पूरा इनको रो रो के बोले थे, आप शायद इनको याद होगा। फिर 2 दिन बाद ये मेरे पास आए, बोले कि कैसे बजाते, तो मैं सारे गाँव पैदल नहीं सब वो उल्टा गलत बजा रहा था। तो फिर इन्होंने मुझे प्रारंभ जो होता है ना शुरुआती का, सब इन्होंने मुझे बताया। फिर मैं अनेकों गुरु से सीखना स्टार्ट कर दिया। तो सबसे प्रथम गुरु हमारे विक्की भैया हैं।
जिए तो जिए कैसे, हाय बिन आप।
Jagger's father runs a hair salon in the village.
लगता नहीं दिल कहीं।
It was when his father bought him a mobile phone that he put it to good use, shooting videos of songs with his scenic village as the background, which have now become a rage.
बिन आपके
Jagger aims to support his family with the earning from his singing career.
झलक तेरी आंखों में ख्वाब सजा जाए।
Bureau Report, India Today.
श्रीवल्ली में नामदक बर्फी।
There are some big names in the art world, like the ones from the progressive modern masters like Raza, Souza, Gaitonde, Hussain, etc. Some collect them as assets, some as vanity, some for the snob value, some for the emotional appeal. They appreciate well and fetch returns. Same with select contemporary artworks. Then there is a whole pool of emerging contemporary artists who cannot just be viewed from the lens of valuations. One such artist at the India Art Fair happened to be Vikrant Pisse. His art reiterates his commitment to the revolutionary spirit of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. His work focuses on making powerful social commentary. The fabric of revolutionary times exuded. From his work, the call to action to uphold constitutional rights, to a social commentary on casteism with the Dalits in India, to depicting the landmark Rohit Vermila suicide case, the artist is working on a series on the legacy of the Dalit Panther movement in India. His iconography is informed and deliberate in radicality. A force of change to reckon with, Bhise's work stands out at the India Art Fair. In New Delhi, Chaiti Narula for India Today.
are watching India Today.
All right, viewers, let's take you directly right now to the BJP headquarters. Celebrations galore. The Prime Minister would be coming in any time now. Aishwarya, we're going to quickly cut across to you. Can you get us a feel of what we are to expect, especially with the Prime Minister coming in, and then we'll cut across to our guests. Aishwarya, can you hear me? All right, so these are visuals that are coming in.
I can hear you. There's a lot of noise, around me, but I'll start by showing you. Preeti, so I'll show you the visuals of the dancing that has started now. Everyone is anticipating Prime Minister Narendra Modi to be reaching the venue in about half an hour. That's what we are made to understand. By around 8:15 is when Prime Minister will be reaching. On one side is this dance taking place. On the other side, we'll show you the other dance that is taking place. So people eagerly now waiting and expressing, their happiness through dance. On one side, we have all the males who are indulging in this dance. On the other side are all the women who are chanting Prime Minister Narendra Modi's name. And not just chanting his name, but also, indulging in dance and, showing Preeti the kind of enthusiasm they have. All eyes now on Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Now the Prime Minister would be coming in, and my colleague Aishwarya is going to get you the very latest. But, it is a big win in Tripura for the Bharatiya Janata Party in Nagaland with their ally. They're going to form government. And in Meghalaya as well, a short while back, Himanta Biswa Sarma tweeted saying, Conrad Sangma, with 25 seats, has called Amit Shah, the Home Minister, and asked him for support. The BJP stands at 3. And Sanju Verma, that's where I bring you in, and something what the TMC spokesperson as well as Aishwarya Mahadev pointed out. What an acrimonious battle that was. Conrad Sangma didn't let the Prime Minister's chopper land. Multiple rallies of the PM, of the Home Minister, calling Conrad Sangma a dynast, to get rid of dynastic politics, deeply corrupt, is what he's been called not once, number of times, that the NPP government has ruined Meghalaya. Why will the BJP want to be in alliance in a state with a party that they have said has ruined Meghalaya?
You know, Preeti, I cannot be on your show and not expect a tough question coming my way. Be that as it may, if you see the realpolitik that Prime Minister Modi or Amit Shah or even JP Nadda engage in, when it comes down to the brass tacks, when push comes to shove, it is very important for us to ensure that acrimony is left behind, a fractious alliance, if indeed that has been the case in the past, is left behind, and look at the state of affairs as they stand today. And as things stand today, one thing which people should not forget is that the Northeast Development Alliance, NEDA, NEDA, the National People's Party, which is headed by Conrad Sangma, and the Northeast Democratic Alliance has been basically stitched together by the BJP. It is a loose coalition of various regional parties across the board from the 8 northeastern states, Assam, Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, what have you. So despite the acrimony between Conrad Sangma and perhaps the BJP top brass, Conrad Sangma never exited out of the NEDA, and neither was he asked to. So, and please don't forget that even in Nagaland, Conrad Sangma had said that while he knows his party, the NPP, will not come to power there, they don't have a fighting chance. They're likely to win 4 to 5 seats, and I think they've done reasonably well. They will support BJP from outside, if not from inside. So
but Sanju Verma, as I go to our other guests, let me ask you this question again. All of that aside, does the BJP still think that the NPP is corrupt? Do you think Conrad Sangma is corrupt? I'm asking you, it's a question. Yes or no?
Preeti. Let's be very honest. If you ask me about whether NCP is corrupt or not, then I have to just tell you that there's a video that is going viral on social media, and your colleague Rajdeep Sardesai has clearly said कि 2024 तो भूल जाओ, whether it is Congress or whether it is any other alliance, it will be BJP which will come back to power. Opposition should start thinking about
I'm sorry, Sanju Verma, I know I'm putting you on the spot here because really, it's a rock and a hard place. Listen, I understand. I understand. It's a tough question because, till 1 week ago, he was the most corrupt and he was the person who ruined Meghalaya.
I told you, realpolitik is different. Realpolitik is not done through Twitter.
The fact is you're unabashed, unapologetic about that, and maybe Aishwarya Mahadev.
I'm unapologetic. Preeti, I just want to say one thing. Preeti, can I just take 20 seconds, please?
Please, ma'am, 20 seconds. Yes,
go
ahead.
Thank you. Preeti, in this halabaloo, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that your audience needs to know one very important thing which your colleague Rahul Srivastava mentioned. I think the biggest reason for the thumping victory of the BJP, in most northeastern states is the fact that infrastructure development has been humongous. I was also amazed to read some data. In the last 8 years, 60 new airports have come up and 387 new routes have come up. And do you know, out of these 387 new routes, 100 routes
that's something we've spoken about at length. We've spoken about at length. The push for the Northeast, where this party is concerned, and the number of visits, even not just, I'm not talking about the Prime Minister, but a lot of cabinet ministers need to go every fortnight to the Northeast. So, that understood, that all aside. But the thumping win has come in numbers for Tripura, but not possibly numbers in Meghalaya and Nagaland. But the BJP has done what it takes to be in power because Aishwarya, the fact is ultimately it is a business of a political party to win elections and the BJP is doing what it takes.
It is a business of a political party to win elections, irrespective of the cost of it. And Sanju Verma very conveniently tried to dodge it. But, there was this Assembly Dome collapse, there was the Muda scam, there was the COVID scam in Meghalaya, all of which were very succinctly bought out by the BJP, which I'm very sure now that, Conrad Sangma has decided he wants to work with them, that he will be washed clean, because the BJP is a washing machine for a lot of people's illegalities. And I think the cost today of what you are giving up or what you're ceding, our smaller regional parties do not understand what is happening.
Okay.
And it's fair and well and to see what development, but I believe if they have the people's mandate, it is about the promises that they have to keep. There's a lot you can say about flying visits. There's a lot you can say about the Prime Minister visiting. But if you're looking at what has happened in the 5 years, if you're looking at the promises, if you're looking at the changing chief ministers in one of these states and the performance, I think that the BJP and the regional parties have a lot more to do for the people.
Well, the fact is, Aishwarya, Ms. Mahadev, ultimately, the numbers have shown whether they need to do more or they don't need to do more. They are in power in the next 5 years. All right, these are the cavalcade, I would reckon, of the Prime Minister pulling in at the BJP headquarters. I want to cut across for a quick word to Rahul Srivastav. Rahul, as we are closing in, okay, that's the Home Minister Amit Shah who's coming in. And he's the one who's actually, along with Himanta Biswa Sarma, if I'm not wrong, is looking at all that's going on in the Northeast and the BJP's campaign there. But Rahul, as we're closing the show, I want to ask you the biggest takeaways. I would reckon for me, number one is how well the NPP's done. Conrad Sangma went solo and possibly will now broker an alliance on his term and not as a junior partner to the BJP. On the other hand, surprise, surprise, Rahul, Nagaland, the NCP has won 5 seats, more than the Congress.
Yes, Preeti. In Nagaland kind of a space, it is not necessary which the party is. It is everything depends on the candidate. So, candidate who is seeking for a national party or somebody, and national parties are looking for footprint, there is a kind of a nexus for tickets. So you have a JDU person in Rajasthan, LJP in Nagaland. All that does happen. It is largely basically suitability. The fact is that, yes, the BJP will go back to Mr. Sangma. It happens in politics. The political tongues are extremely forked in nature. You had Congress and CPM together in Bengal, and they were fighting each other in Kerala. They can do that. Sometimes I have a suspicion that the bitterness between the NPP and the BJP had a degree of sweetness to it. I think that split and that attacking, to me, I don't know, I could be wrong. I think it was strategic. I think that alliance was not, it broke, but it was broken to occupy that opposition space. Remember, if the BJP was with the NPP, the entire opposition vote, anti and government vote would have gone to the opposition, benefiting the Trinamool Congress. Now, since the BJP was bitterly against Conrad Sangma, calling it all kind of things, the opposition to NPP vote got divided between the BJP and the Trinamool Congress. Sometimes I wonder whether I'm right or something like this never happened.
All right, Rahul, appreciate you joining us. Thank you, ladies, as well. Aishwarya Mahadev and Sanju Verma, who have joined us through the course of this bulletin. But we're going to train our eyes right now on all the action that's taking place at the BJP headquarters. Amit Shah walking in. You'd expect the Prime Minister in a very short while from now. This is classic playbook BJP celebration after every election that they have won. Huge celebration in the evening at the BJP headquarters. We're going to leave you with these visuals. We'll be right back, but it's a fabulous day at the hustings when it comes down for the BJP in Tripura. And of course, their game is on. They're in governance in Meghalaya and in Nagaland as well. A quick break to stay with us. On the other side, Rahul Kamal joins us.
You are watching India Today.
have seen Iron Man Tony Stark wear it to reach war zones. You have seen Shah Rukh Khan and John Abraham wage a war in the sky wearing these. Jetpack suits are now going to be part of military drills and rescue operations. The Indian Army will soon adopt jetpack technology. These suits will be used for enhanced tactical mobility on line of actual control amid border tensions with China. The Indian Aerospace Defence News shared a demo on Twitter of its jetpack flying over a water body, buildings and fields. Soldiers will be able to fly 10 to 15 meters in the air by wearing this suit powered by a gas turbine engine. They can clock a speed of 50 km per hour. Jetpacks were the center of attraction at the Aero India 2023 held recently.
अगर टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में बात करेंगे, ये पूरा टर्बोजेट इंजन से चलता है। इसका डीजल फ्यूल है। हमने डीजल इसलिए चूज किया कि डीजल का जो फ्लैश पॉइंट एंड फायर पॉइंट है वो नॉर्मल एविएशन फ्यूल से काफी आगे है।
Jetpacks are being tested by armed forces across the world. These videos from the UK highlight the features of the technology. In the first video, one can see how a soldier lands on the deck and drops a ladder over the side for the rest of the team to climb up on. In the second, the soldier demonstrates the ability to quickly zip back and forth between the ship and the raft. And in the third, 3 jet suit jockeys land on the deck of a ship successfully. Jet suits are soon going to change the way wars are fought. Bureau Report, India Today.
War is spectator sport. We are emperors of Rome.
Tom Hiddleston will reportedly reprise his role as the protagonist Jonathan Pine in the second season of Night Manager.
My name's Pine. I'm the night manager.
To bring the money to us, we give you back the boy.
You'll be in so deep, you'll worry that you'll never get out.
I got nothing to lose.
According to reports, the show will begin filming later this year in London and South America under the codename Steelworks.
My main man, my star.
I think he might be playing both sides.
We need Richard Roper. I'm going to get you out of here.
The series revolves around Pine, a former British soldier and night manager of a 5-star hotel in Cairo, who is hired by the head of a foreign office team to infiltrate Roper's inner circle.
Anyone can betray anyone.
Penned by Farr and directed by Susan Bayer, the first season also starred Olivia Colman, Tom Hollander, Elizabeth Debicki and David Harewood among
is concerned, but he's back now in his political avatar as the top campaigner of the BJP, and a lot that has gone down today in the northeast is credit to Narendra Modi. Multiple rallies in Tripura, Meghalaya, even Nagaland being received by JP Nadda there, all smiles understandably. Tripura was their acid test. They needed to retain their vote base to bunk the theory that this was an inorganic spurt or growth for the Bharatiya Janata Party in Tripura. They rose from 2 to 44% from 2013 to 2018, and they've retained it in terms of percentage. It will settle viewers close to 40% vote share in Tripura alone. And these are visuals we've seen one too many times, not too many moons ago. In December 10th, were same visuals when BJP in the leadership of Narendra Modi had scripted an emphatic win, or a historic win, many would suggest, in Gujarat. Flower petals, rose petals being showered at the Prime Minister, felicitated by the BJP cadre there. Lots of song and dance. Are you going to expect a speech? I would reckon yes, that the Prime Minister would be speaking and addressing the cadre at the BJP headquarters. Flanking him is JP Nadda. Short while back, Amit Shah also came in. The BJP, viewers, has romped to power in Tripura with 32 seats, 31 of its own and 1 IPFT of its ally, but didn't quite need the ally, was over the halfway mark. On the other hand, in Meghalaya, with just 3 seats, it's now going to be part of the government with Conrad Sangma's NPP. And in Nagaland, in alliance as well, and in governance. So where all 3 states that have gone to the hustings today, the Bharatiya Janata Party has had a very, very good day, fabulous day, one would suggest. And a lot of credit actually goes to the Prime Minister. You know, he can't really emphasize it enough. It's just, he seemed to have, with strategy, strategically, tried to blur that divide when it comes down to the mainland and the Far East. And he's done so with multiple visits physically. He's instructed the cabinet ministers that 1 cabinet ministers every fortnightly will be in the northeast. In terms of development, there is a development push. And all of that reaching to fruition. And of course, it was assisted by a steady effort and a steady hand in terms of grassroots work by the RSS. All of that reaching fruition today, where you see the BJP reaping the benefits of all of that. Amit Shah, JP Nadda and Narendra Modi now, all 3 of them. Okay, Amit Shah still waiting, the Prime Minister has gone in. Well, that's the Home Minister there. But it's a big day for the Bharatiya Janata Party. They've opened the year on an emphatic win in the northeast, much like the visuals we'd seen at the BJP headquarters just about a month ago. It's a blockbuster year when it comes down to elections, viewers. And the BJP strike rate is fabulous already, 3 down. 1 state they are going to form government, they're going to be in governance into, so all tick boxes, all boxes ticked for the BJP, where the first 3 states going into elections is concerned. I want to cut across right now to our news director, Rahul Kaval, taking you through the latest.
Vaishnav, Jai Panda, Gajendra Shekhawat, the BJP wadis seated there, awaiting the Prime Minister 3 on 3. That's the BJP's track record from the northeast, 6 more to go. These were the first set of results in a year packed with elections, and the BJP off to a rousing start. Retaining Tripura, coming to power through alliances in Nagaland, and having a good chance of coming to power in Meghalaya as well. No wonder Prime Minister Modi is pleased. This is also the day when foreign ministers from the world's top economies are in the country, meeting with the Prime Minister, meeting each other. Those meetings chaired by Dr. Jaishankar. But this is the big political celebration at the moment. Jai Prakash Nadda, the BJP president, right behind the Prime Minister as he receives the warm applause, acknowledgement, love, support from BJP Karyakartas at the Deen Dayal Upadhyay building in the national capital, the new BJP headquarters. This is, make no mistake, a big moment, especially given the fact that in 2014, the BJP had only a marginal presence in the northeast. From there, as the new map put out by the Data Intelligence Unit in India today shows, there is a BJP sweep. Majority of the landmass of the northeast now has a lotus blooming. That's the reason why BJP workers are celebrating in the way that they are at the BJP headquarters in the national capital. In a short while from now, Prime Minister Modi will be addressing the BJP workers and his top team. Karnataka is up next, and Karnataka is a tough battle because the local government, the state government of Basavaraj Bommai faces serious anti-incumbency. This is also why B.S. Yediyurappa, the Lingayat stalwart, former chief minister, is being propped up as the head of the campaign committee for the BJP. They're trying to tell the Lingayat vote bank that Yedurappa is still important and he still has his full pride of place. That's JP Nadda welcoming the Prime Minister a short while before now. BJP workers dancing on your screens there. Remember, just at this moment, the foreign ministers of G20 countries are at the Raisina dialogue, at least a few of them, and through the day they've been meeting each other. We had meetings between Dr. Jaishankar and the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Kang, meetings also between the Indian Foreign Minister and Anthony Blinken. And I want to tell our viewers that in a short while from now, once this big BJP Jamburi is over, I'll get you an exclusive interview with the American Secretary of State. This is the only interview on any television channel that the US Secretary of State is doing. It's being recorded at this moment. I'm just waiting for the Prime Minister's speech to get over before we bring that interview out for our viewers. But this, remember, has been a very newsy day. This morning we had the Supreme Court come out and announce a committee of experts who would look at the regulatory mechanism to protect investors after the Hindenburg charges against the Adani Group. This is also the day when the Supreme Court came out with a landmark judgment on the issue of the appointment of election commissioners, where it was decided that in the same manner in which the CBI appoints its director, from now on election commissioners will be appointed. So it will have the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition and the Chief Justice of India sitting on that committee, which will to a great extent change the way election commissioners are appointed, because now that can't happen without having the consent of the Leader of the Opposition and the Chief Justice of India. So changing the profile of the candidates who will be put up for selection. That's a big, major announcement there. Aishwarya Paliwal joins us now live from the BJP headquarters. Aishwarya, describe to our viewers the scenes that you're seeing around you. Of Dole, Nagara is right behind Aishwarya, so I don't think she can hear me just at the moment. Give us a second, I'll try and patch that line through. The BJP president has a wrap around him which comes from the northeast, and remember the Prime Minister also embracing the culture, the costumes of the northeast, the dress of the northeast quite frequently on his visits there. Behind him, the Home Minister who took personal charge of the campaign, especially in Tripura, also the campaigns in Nagaland and in Meghalaya, spending time on the ground, spending a night in fact in Nagaland. And the northeast is very, very important for the BJP and for the RSS as it seeks to integrate India's northeastern states with the larger hinterland. And remember, just look at how Home Minister Amit Shah very consciously staying away from the frame, allowing for the camera's gaze to be fixed on Prime Minister Modi and the BJP president. He had a role to play in these victories, but he's choosing to stay away so that the full attention is focused on the Prime Minister and right behind him, the BJP president. Remember, the last time there were elections, there was Gujarat and Himachal. Gujarat was a resounding success. Himachal, the BJP lost. But this is a big day in the northeast, in states where the BJP had only a marginal presence till a few years ago. Now they're increasing its tally in Meghalaya, winning by itself in Tripura, in a state where the left had a citadel for decades. That's a big achievement.
आदरणीय राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी और आदरणीय गृह मंत्री जी का मंच पर आगमन हो रहा है।
Bharatiya Janata Party. Next to him was Ashwini Vaishnav, the Minister for Information Technology.
स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है। पूर्वोत्तर की जीत हमारी है। स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है। मोदी भारतीय जनता पार्टी के यशस्वी राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष आदरणीय जगत प्रकाश नड्डा जी एवं आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में सफल गृह मंत्री एवं सहकारिता मंत्री आदरणीय अमित भाई शाह जी से नम्र अनुरोध करता हूं कि पुष्पमाला पहनाकर आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का स्वागत करें। पूर्वोत्तर की जीत हमारी है। मैं आदरणीय राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष नड्डा जी से नम्र अनुरोध करता हूं कि त्रिपुरा की शाल पहनाकर आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का वो यहां पर सम्मान करें। आदरणीय राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी अभी हम सबको संबोधित करेंगे। आदरणीय नड्डा जी। बोलिए भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की। स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है, स्वागत है भाई, स्वागत है। आज के इस विजय उत्सव पर त्रिपुरा, नागालैंड और मेघालय में कमल पुनः खिलने पर आज हम सबके बीच में विजय उत्सव मनाने के लिए और हमारा हौसला बढ़ाने के लिए भारत के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का मैं अपनी ओर से और आप सबकी ओर से उनका हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं, स्वागत करता हूं। जैसा मैंने कहा कि आप सबकी ओर से प्रधानमंत्री जी का अभिनंदन करता हूं, स्वागत करता हूं और देश भर के लाखों कार्यकर्ता जो आज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया के माध्यम से जुड़े हैं, उन सब की ओर से भी प्रधानमंत्री जी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन, स्वागत। साथ ही साथ अभिनंदन के साथ जिस तरीके से प्रधानमंत्री जी ने नॉर्थ ईस्ट के अंदर त्रिपुरा में दोबारा सरकार बनाने में जिस तरीके से नेतृत्व दिया है और नागालैंड में भारतीय जनता पार्टी को यशस्वी बनाया और मेघालय में भी वोट परसेंटेज को आगे बढ़ाने में योगदान किया है, मैं आप सबकी ओर से, लाखों कार्यकर्ताओं की ओर से प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी को इस अथक प्रयास और नेतृत्व के लिए आप सबकी ओर से उनका हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत करता हूं। मित्रों, जो आज आप जीत दोबारा दर्ज करा रहे हैं त्रिपुरा में, नागालैंड में अपने आप को स्थापित करते हुए आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, यह कोई अनायास नहीं हुआ है। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने एक लंबी सोच लेकर, एक दूरदृष्टि लेकर, एक संकल्प लेकर भारत की राजनीति में और राजनेताओं के द्वारा जिस नॉर्थ ईस्ट का उपेक्षा की जा रही थी, उसको मुख्य धारा में लाने का काम और नीतिगत निर्णय लेते हुए नॉर्थ ईस्ट को आगे बढ़ाने का काम आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने किया। इस कारण से हमको ये सफलता मिली है। आप सबको याद होगा, आप सबको याद होगा कि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा था कि अगर देश के अन्य इलाके विकास कर सकते हैं, अगर देश के अन्य इलाके मुख्य धारा में आकर के आगे बढ़ सकते हैं, तो हमारा नॉर्थ ईस्ट क्यों नहीं विकास कर सकता। और इस बात को लेकर के संकल्प लेकर के नॉर्थ ईस्ट को आगे बढ़ाने का काम किया है। आज आपको जानकर के खुशी होगी कि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने लुक ईस्ट पॉलिसी, पूर्व की ओर देखो, पूर्वोत्तर की ओर देखो और पूर्वोत्तर को आगे बढ़ाने का काम करे, इस नीति को लेकर के प्रधानमंत्री जी चले। और आपको जानकर के यह भी खुशी होगी कि भारत के पहले प्रधानमंत्री हैं मोदी जी, जिन्होंने नॉर्थ ईस्ट में 50 बार से ज्यादा नॉर्थ ईस्ट का भ्रमण किया और नॉर्थ ईस्ट को मुख्य धारा में लेकर के आया। पहले प्रधानमंत्री हैं जिन्होंने नॉर्थ ईस्ट के लिए एक लक्ष्य तय किया और नॉर्थ ईस्ट पूर्वोत्तर राज्यों को मुख्य धारा में लाने के लिए अष्टलक्ष्मी की बात कहते हुए सारे नॉर्थ ईस्ट के स्टेट्स का विकास करने की बात आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने करी। और इसके साथ साथ प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अष्ट लक्ष्मी के साथ साथ अष्ट आधार भी दिए और उसका मंत्र भी हम सबको दिया। क्या मंत्र था कि नॉर्थ ईस्ट में शांति होनी चाहिए, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में पावर की बहुत बड़ी गुंजाइश है, इसलिए एनर्जी का काम होना चाहिए, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में नेचुरल फार्मिंग होनी चाहिए, नॉर्थ ईस्ट को 5G से कनेक्ट करना चाहिए, नॉर्थ ईस्ट को खेल कूद में बढ़ावा देना चाहिए और नॉर्थ ईस्ट को जो उसकी पोटेंशियल है उसको पूरा का पूरा आगे बढ़ाना चाहिए। ये 8 मंत्र लेकर के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अष्टलक्ष्मी को संवारने का काम किया, आगे बढ़ाने का काम किया। आपको जानकर के खुशी होगी कि हम चुनाव के नतीजों के बाद त्रिपुरा में दोबारा सरकार बना रहे हैं प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व के कारण। आज असम में हमने दोबारा सरकार बनाई, अरुणाचल प्रदेश में हम सरकार में हैं, मणिपुर में हमने दोबारा सरकार बनाई और इसी तरीके से आगे चल करके हम नागालैंड में सरकार अभी बना रहे हैं और आगे भी हम इन चुनावों के माध्यम से भारतीय जनता पार्टी को मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में और मजबूत करके आगे बढ़ेंगे। इस बात का हम संकल्प लेते हैं। मैं एक बात और बताना चाहता हूं, जब प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी 2014 में प्रधानमंत्री बने, उस समय पूर्वोत्तर कैसा पूर्वोत्तर था? पूर्वोत्तर जाना जाता था बंद के लिए, ब्लॉकेड के लिए, इंसर्जेंसी के लिए, आतंकवाद के लिए, टारगेटेड किलिंग के लिए, तय करके किसी को किलिंग करना, अबडक्शन कर लेना, अपहरण कर लेना, इसके लिए नॉर्थ ईस्ट जाना जाता था। दिनों नहीं ब्लॉकेड लगते थे, महीनों ब्लॉकेड लगते थे, सारा काम रुक जाता था। लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व ने नॉर्थ ईस्ट की तस्वीर और तकदीर बदल डाली। आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट शांति के लिए जाना जाता है। आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट स्थिरता के लिए जाना जाता है, आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट सद्भाव के लिए जाना जाता है, आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट वहां इंसर्जेंसी नाम की चीज समाप्त हो गई प्राय। और उसी तरीके से वार्तालाप के द्वारा प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जितने भी इस तरीके के ग्रुप्स थे उनसे वार्तालाप करते हुए नॉर्थ ईस्ट में शांति लाने का काम और स्थिरता लाने का काम आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया है। मैं यहां यह भी बताना चाहता हूं कि कांग्रेस पार्टी ने नॉर्थ ईस्ट को एटीएम समझ रखा था, एटीएम समझ रखा था। पैसे कमाओ, भ्रष्टाचार होने दो, वहां के लोगों का जो होता है सो हो, लेकिन भ्रष्टाचार मुक्त, शांति युक्त, विकास युक्त नॉर्थ ईस्ट को सरकारें दी तो प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व के कारण मिला है। इस बात को भी हमको समझना होगा। मैं यहां यह भी आपको बताना चाहता हूं कि आज जहां शांति आई वहीं विकास के नए आयाम भी लिखे गए। और इसके लिए प्रधानमंत्री जी ने मंत्र क्या दिया? मंत्र दिया हीरा। हाईवे, इंटरनेट, रेलवेज और एयरवेज, यानी एयरपोर्ट का विकास हो, कनेक्टिविटी आए। आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट के किसी भी कैपिटल में जाने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती। हम कुछ घंटों में दिल्ली से उड़कर वहां पहुंच सकते हैं। यह परिस्थिति आकर के खड़ी हुई है। आपको जानकर के खुशी होगी कि नागालैंड में 100 साल के बाद दूसरा रेलवे स्टेशन शौखोवी बना, तो वह भी प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में बना। हजारों करोड़ रुपए खर्च हुए और उस विकास की दृष्टि से सड़कों का जाल बिछा। आज नेशनल हाईवे, 4 वे, 6 वे लेन, इस तरीके की योजनाएं चल रही हैं। अगरतला से लेकर के कलकत्ता तक यह सड़कों का जाल बिछा करके जो 36 घंटे लगते थे वो 16 घंटे में पूरा करने का संकल्प लिया तो प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने लिया। इसलिए विकास की नई योजनाएं बना करके चले। और आज जो हमको नतीजे देखने को मिल रहे हैं, ये प्रधानमंत्री जी की दूरदृष्टि, लगन, कर्मठ तरीके से उन चीजों को नीचे धरती पर उतारना, गांव, गरीब, वंचित, पीड़ित, शोषित, दलित, इनको मजबूती देना, प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना के तहत ताकत देना, प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना के का ताकत देना ताकि कोई गरीब भूखा न सोए, इसकी व्यवस्था करना। हर दृष्टि से एक कोशिश हुई है हमारे स्वच्छता अभियान के तरीके से हर स्टेट में महिलाओं को, उनको इज्जत घर देना और उनको इज्जत देना, यह काम मोदी जी ने संकल्प के रूप में लिया है। और यही कारण है कि आज यह परिवर्तन हमको देखने को मिलता है। मैं यहां यह भी कहना चाहूंगा, आज कांग्रेस का क्या हाल हो गया, कहीं देखने को नहीं मिलती है। लेकिन अभी भी रस्सी जल गई है, बल नहीं गया है। ऐंठन चली गई, ऐंठन अभी भी बरकरार है, जमीन खिसक गई है और अभी भी सुबुद्धि नाम की चीज दूर दूर तक उनके नजदीक नहीं आई है। अब देखिए किस तरीके की भाषा आज कांग्रेस पार्टी इस्तेमाल कर रही है, किस तरीके की असभ्य भाषा में उतर आए हैं, किस तरीके से प्रधानमंत्री जी के बारे में टिप्पणी कर रहे हैं, किस तरीके से राजनीति की हर सीमाओं को लांघ करके वो अपना छोटापन और ओछापन दिखा रहे हैं। लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में आप सब लोग मिलकर हर जगह कमल ही कमल खिला रहे हैं, कमल ही कमल खिला रहे हैं। ये मोदी जी के प्रति आपका प्यार, ये दुनिया में संदेश दे रहा है कि तुम अपनी भाषा से कितने भी नीचे चले जाओ, भारत मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में आगे ही बढ़ने वाला है और तीव्र गति से चलने वाला है। मैं आपके और हमारे यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के बीच में ज्यादा देर न रहता हुआ मैं आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी से निवेदन करूंगा कि वो हम सबका मार्गदर्शन करें और उनको विश्वास दिलाऊंगा कि हम उनके रास्ते पर चलेंगे। आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री,
भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की। सबसे पहले मेरी आप सबको एक प्रार्थना है। नॉर्थ ईस्ट के हमारे सभी भाइयों बहनों के सम्मान में, नॉर्थ ईस्ट के हमारे सभी नागरिकों के सम्मान में आप अपना मोबाइल फोन निकाल करके फ्लैश लाइट चालू कीजिए और नॉर्थ ईस्ट के सभी नागरिकों का अभिनंदन कीजिए। जिन जिन के पास मोबाइल है अपनी फ्लैश चला करके, ये नॉर्थ ईस्ट के नागरिकों का सम्मान है, ये नॉर्थ ईस्ट के देशभक्ति का सम्मान है, ये नॉर्थ ईस्ट का प्रगति के रास्ते पर जाने का सम्मान है। ये नॉर्थ ईस्ट के लोगों के सम्मान में आपने जो ये मोबाइल फोन के माध्यम से प्रकाश फैलाया है, ये प्रकाश उनके सम्मान में है, उनके गौरव में है। आपका मैं धन्यवाद करता हूं। साथियों, बीते वर्षों में भाजपा मुख्यालय ऐसे अनेक अवसरों का साक्षी बना है। आज हमारे लिए जनता जनार्दन को विनम्रता से नमन करने का एक और अवसर आया है। मैं त्रिपुरा, मेघालय और नागालैंड की जनता का सर झुकाकर वंदन करता हूं, उन सबका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। इन राज्यों की जनता ने बीजेपी और हमारे साथी सहयोगियों को भरपूर आशीर्वाद दिया है। मैं आज त्रिपुरा, नागालैंड और मेघालय के बीजेपी कार्यकर्ताओं को भी बहुत बधाई देता हूं। दिल्ली में या हमारे अन्य इलाकों में बीजेपी का काम करना उतना कठिन नहीं है जितना नॉर्थ ईस्ट में है। वहां का कार्यकर्ता हमसे अनेक गुना मेहनत करता है और इसलिए वहां के कार्यकर्ता विशेष रूप से अभिनंदन के अधिकारी हैं। आज के नतीजे आप सभी भाजपा कार्यकर्ताओं की मेहनत का परिणाम है। साथियों, आज के चुनाव और इन चुनाव परिणामों में देश के लिए, दुनिया के लिए बहुत सारे संदेश हैं। आज के नतीजे ये दिखाते हैं कि भारत में लोकतंत्र और लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्थाओं पर कितनी आस्था है एक मजबूत आशावाद है। लोकतंत्र की राह पर चलते हुए हर शंका आशंका का समाधान हो सकता है, बदलाव लाया जा सकता है। एक समय था जब नॉर्थ ईस्ट में चुनाव होते थे, नतीजे आते थे, तो दिल्ली में और देश के अन्य हिस्सों में उतनी चर्चा ही नहीं होती थी। जो चर्चा होती भी थी तो वो चुनावी हिंसा की होती थी, बम बंदूक और ब्लॉकेड की चर्चा होती थी। त्रिपुरा में तो हाल ये था कि पहले एक पार्टी के अलावा किसी दूसरी पार्टी का झंडा तक नहीं लगाया जा सकता था, और अगर किसी ने लगाने की कोशिश की तो उसको लहूलुहान कर दिया जाता था। इस बार इन चुनावों में हमने कितना बड़ा परिवर्तन देखा है। भाजपा ने नॉर्थ ईस्ट की राजनीति की दिशा ही नहीं, उसकी दशा ही नहीं, लेकिन एक आत्मविश्वास से भरा हुआ और नई दिशा पर चल पड़ा हुआ नॉर्थ ईस्ट हम देख रहे हैं। आज सुबह से मैं जब टीवी देख पाया, इन चुनावों के नतीजे ही छाए रहे। ये सिर्फ दिलों की दूरी समाप्त होने का ही नहीं, बल्कि ये नई सोच का प्रतिबिंब है। अब नॉर्थ ईस्ट न दिल्ली से दूर है और न ही दिल से दूर है। ये युग परिवर्तन का समय है। ये नया इतिहास रचे जाने का समय है। मैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट की शांति, समृद्धि और विकास का ये समय देख रहा हूं। मुझे याद है कि कुछ दिनों पहले जब मैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट गया था तो किसी ने मुझे बोला कि मोदी जी, आपको अपनी हाफ सेंचुरी के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई। तो मैंने उनको पूछा कि भाई ये कैसी हाफ सेंचुरी आप बता रहे हैं? तब उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि जब से बोले आप प्रधानमंत्री बने हैं, आप 50 से भी ज्यादा बार नॉर्थ ईस्ट का विजिट कर चुके हैं, जो अभी नड्डा जी बता रहे थे। साथियों, सवाल बधाई का नहीं है, लेकिन जब एक नागरिक मुझे ये कह रहा था तब मैं अनुभव कर रहा था कि जाने मात्र से इसके दिल को कितना सुकून मिल रहा है। नॉर्थ ईस्ट के राज्यों के दिलों में कितना प्यार उमड़ करके आया है, उसकी वो अभिव्यक्ति थी। और तब मुझे लगता था कि मेहनत कभी न कभी तो रंग लाती है। चुनाव जीतने से भी ज्यादा मुझे इस बात का संतोष है कि प्रधानमंत्री के कार्यकाल में बार बार नॉर्थ ईस्ट जाकर के मैंने उनके दिलों को जीता है, और वो मेरे लिए सबसे बड़ी जीत है। मुझे ये संतोष भी हुआ कि पूर्वोत्तर के लोगों को ये एहसास हो रहा है कि अब उनकी उपेक्षा नहीं होती। केंद्र की भाजपा सरकार में नॉर्थ ईस्ट के राज्यों को भी उतना ही महत्व मिलता है। साथियों, आज बहुत सारे पॉलिटिकल विश्लेषक बीजेपी की सफलता को समझने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। कुछ हमारे विशेष शुभचिंतक भी हैं। इन विशेष शुभचिंतक जिनके पेट में ये सोच सोच करके दर्द होता है कि बीजेपी की जीत का राज क्या है। साथियों, मैं ज्यादा तो टीवी देख नहीं पाता हूं, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि शायद अब तक मैंने देखा नहीं है कि ईवीएम पर कोई गाली पड़नी शुरू हुई है कि नहीं हुई है। लेकिन ऐसे हर शुभचिंतक को मैं बीजेपी की सफलता का रहस्य बताना चाहता हूं। भाजपा के विजय अभियान का रहस्य छिपा है त्रिवेणी में। त्रिवेणी यानी 3 धाराओं का संगम। इस त्रिवेणी की पहली शक्ति है भाजपा सरकारों का कार्य। इस त्रिवेणी की दूसरी शक्ति है भाजपा सरकारों की कार्य संस्कृति। और इस त्रिवेणी की तीसरी शक्ति है भाजपा के कार्यकर्ताओं का सेवा भाव। ये त्रिवेणी मिलकर भाजपा की शक्ति को 1+1+1 यानी 111 गुना बढ़ा देते हैं। हमने देश को एक नई राजनीति दी है, राजनीति की एक नई संस्कृति दी है। हमने सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास और सबका प्रयास, एक नया विकास मॉडल देश को दिया है। हमारे काम के तौर तरीकों में कोई भेदभाव नहीं होता। हम सबके विकास में भरोसा करते हैं। हम सबके लिए सेवा भाव से काम करते हैं। हमारी प्रेरणा है एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत। भाजपा का विकास मॉडल देश हित को सर्वोपरि रखता है। हमारे लिए देश प्रथम है, देशवासी प्रथम है। साथियों, हमारे देश में हमेशा से एक और पॉलिटिकल मॉडल रहा जिसमें पहले ऐसा कहते थे कि जो दूरदृष्टा होते हैं, स्टेट्समैन होते हैं, वो आने वाली पीढ़ियों का सोचते हैं और पॉलिटिशियन के लिए कहा जाता था कि वो अगले चुनाव का सोचते हैं। तो मुझे किसी ने एक बार कहा तो मैंने कहा अब कहावत और बदल गई है। बोले क्या? मैंने कहा पहले जो स्टेट्समैन होते हैं वो अगली पीढ़ी के लिए सोचते हैं। पहले कहा जाता था कि पॉलिटिशियन अगले चुनाव के लिए सोचते हैं, लेकिन आज तो समय ऐसा बदल गया है कि पॉलिटिशियन दूसरे दिन के अखबार में क्या छपेगा इस पर ही सोचते रहते हैं। शाम को टीवी में उनकी तस्वीर आएगी कि नहीं, यही सोचते रहते हैं। और इसलिए जो आसान चीजें होती हैं, जो जरा मुंह में पानी छूट जाए ऐसी चीजें होती हैं, और जिससे लोगों को आसानी से गुमराह किया जा सकता है, उसी मॉडल पर चलने की फैशन बढ़ रही है। राजनीति के इस मॉडल में कठिन लक्ष्यों को हाथ ही नहीं लगाया जाता था, तब समस्याओं को ऐसे टाल दिया जाता था जैसे उनका कोई अस्तित्व ही नहीं है, समस्या की तरफ देखना ही नहीं। ये पॉलिटिकल मॉडल कठिनाइयों का हल नहीं करता था, बल्कि लोगों के जीवन को लंबे समय के लिए कठिनाई में जीने के लिए मजबूर कर देता था। भाजपा ने इस अप्रोच को पूरी तरह बदल दिया है। हम सबसे कठिन चीजों को हल करने के लिए कठिन से कठिन मेहनत करते हैं, और तमाम मुश्किलों के बावजूद समाधान के जो भी रास्ते मिले उन रास्तों पर चलने का ईमानदारी से प्रयास करते हैं। हम ये नहीं देखते कि इस काम को करना कितना मुश्किल होगा, बल्कि हम ये देखते हैं कि अगर हमने इस काम को नहीं किया तो लोगों का जीवन और कितना मुश्किल हो जाएगा। हमें दर्द होता है, हमारी नींद चली जाती है। नॉर्थ ईस्ट का उदाहरण ही हमारे सामने है। आजादी के 7 दशकों बाद भी नॉर्थ ईस्ट के हजारों गांवों तक बिजली नहीं पहुंची थी साथियों। क्या 21वीं सदी में बिना बिजली की जिंदगी कोई कल्पना कर सकता है? पहले की सरकारों ने देखा कि वहां तक बिजली पहुंचाना कठिन काम है, इसलिए उन गांवों को अंधेरे में छोड़ दिया गया। नॉर्थ ईस्ट के लोगों को घर, पक्के घर, उनको नल से जल, उनके घरों में गैस का कनेक्शन ये उपलब्ध कराने ये पहले की सरकारों के काम की सूची में ही नहीं था, क्योंकि उनके लिए न तो उन क्षेत्रों की परवाह थी और न ही ऐसे कठिन कामों को करने का हौसला था। एयरपोर्ट, हाईवे, रेलवे, ये कनेक्टिविटी नॉर्थ ईस्ट में इन चीजों के विकास को भी कठिन मान लिया गया था। पहले की सरकारें कठिनाइयों से बचती रही और इसकी वजह से हर परियोजना में देरी होती रही। हमने इन परियोजनाओं को पूरा किया और लगातार मेहनत कर रहे हैं। हमारे ऐसे ही प्रयासों की वजह से आज देश पहली बार गरीबी के खिलाफ इतनी मजबूती से लड़ रहा है। और मुझे तो खुशी है कि मेरा गरीब भाई भी गरीबी को खत्म करने के लिए मेरे साथ कंधे से कंधा खड़ा लगा करके मेहनत कर रहा है। इसलिए आज भारत के विकास और उसकी रफ्तार की तारीफ पूरी दुनिया में हो रही है। हो रही है कि नहीं हो रही है? चारों तरफ गुंज सुनाई दे रही है कि नहीं सुनाई दे रही है? साथियों, भाजपा के विजय अभियान में जो हमारी त्रिवेणी की तीसरी शक्ति है, शिव जी के भी कहते हैं ना तीसरा नेत्र, सबसे सामर्थ्यवान माना जाता है। ये हमारी जो तीसरी शक्ति है, वो तीसरी शक्ति हमारे भाजपा के कार्यकर्ता है और मैं उनको बार बार नमन करता हूं। भाजपा के कार्यकर्ता का सेवा भाव अतुल्य है। भाजपा के कार्यकर्ता का श्रम और समर्पण अतुल्य है। भाजपा के कार्यकर्ता की पहचान उसके अनुशासन से होती है। हमारी पार्टी ने बड़ी से बड़ी मुश्किलों को देखा है। हमने कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों का सामना किया है, लेकिन हमारे कार्यकर्ता ने मुश्किल से मुश्किल हालातों में भी पार्टी का झंडा बुलंद रखा है। भाजपा जब कदम बढ़ाती है तो उसे रोकने के लिए उसके कार्यकर्ताओं को प्रताड़ित किया जाता है, उनके खिलाफ हिंसा की होती है, लेकिन वो राष्ट्र के लिए, राष्ट्र निर्माण के लिए संकल्पित होते हैं। इसलिए वो त्याग की पराकाष्ठा से पार्टी के कदमों को और देश के सपनों को कभी भी टूटने नहीं देते हैं, निरंतर आगे बढ़ते रहते हैं। जिस पार्टी के पास कार्य हो, कार्य संस्कृति हो और ऐसे समर्पित कार्यकर्ता हो, उसके लिए कुछ भी असंभव नहीं है। साथियों, आज मुझे ये देखकर भी खुशी है, हर चुनाव के साथ साथ देश की बहनों बेटियों का सुरक्षा कवच बीजेपी के लिए मजबूत होता जा रहा है। त्रिपुरा की, नॉर्थ ईस्ट की बहनों को भी मैं इस भरोसे के लिए विशेष आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। ये बीजेपी का सौभाग्य रहा है कि हमने नागालैंड को पहली राज्यसभा सांसद एक महिला को देकर के शुभ शुरुआत की। आज नागालैंड में तो पहली बार महिला उम्मीदवार चुनाव जीतकर विधानसभा पहुंची है। ये हम सभी के लिए, पूरे देश की माताओं बहनों के लिए गौरव की बात है। बीजेपी महिलाओं के सशक्तिकरण के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। पीएम आवास योजना में महिलाओं के नाम घर हो, जल जीवन मिशन के तहत हर घर पाइप से पानी पहुंचाना हो, गरीब कल्याण योजना के तहत मुफ्त राशन देना हो, आयुष्मान भारत योजना के तहत 5 लाख रुपए तक का मुफ्त इलाज देना हो, मुद्रा योजना के माध्यम से बिना गारंटी लिए 10 लाख रुपए तक की मदद हो, ऐसी अनेक योजना का लाभ नॉर्थ ईस्ट की लाखों बहनों को हुआ है। इसलिए उनका भरोसा भाजपा पर लगातार सशक्त हो रहा है। ऐसे समय में जब कुछ लोग मोदी की कब्र खोदने की ख्वाहिश कर रहे हैं, जहां मौका पड़ता है कमल खिलता ही जा रहा है, खिलता ही जा रहा है। कुछ लोग कट्टर की पहचान में लगे हुए हैं। वो हर काम बेईमानी भी कट्टरता से करते हैं। ये कट्टर लोग कहते हैं मर जा मोदी, वो कहते हैं मर जा मोदी। देश कह रहे हैं मत जा मोदी, मत जा मोदी, मत जा। साथियों, आज के चुनाव नतीजों के बाद आज के नतीजों के बाद कांग्रेस ने छोटों के प्रति अपनी नफरत को फिर से जग जाहिर कर दिया। कांग्रेस कह रही है और अध्यक्ष उनके कह रहे हैं कि ये तो छोटे राज्य हैं, इनके नतीजे उतना मायने नहीं रखते। जब दिल में ही भारत को जोड़ने की भावना ना हो तो ऐसे बोल निकलते ही है। ये इन राज्यों के लोगों का अपमान है, जनमत का अपमान है। छोटे राज्यों को इस तरह तिरस्कार की भावना से देखकर कांग्रेस बहुत बड़ी गलती कर रही है। इसी सोच की वजह से कांग्रेस ने हमेशा देश के गरीब को छोटा समझा, देश के दलित, पिछड़ों, आदिवासियों को छोटा समझा। कांग्रेस ने हमेशा संख्या बल को, वोट बैंक को देखते हुए राजनीति की है। यही मानसिकता है जिसने आजादी के बाद देश का बहुत बड़ा नुकसान किया है। जब हमारी सरकार ने गरीब के लिए शौचालय बनाए तो कांग्रेस उसे छोटा काम कहती रही। जब हमने गरीब के बैंक खाते खुलवाए तो कांग्रेस ने उसे भी छोटा काम बताया। जब हमने सफाई अभियान चलाया, कांग्रेस ने छोटा काम मानकर उसका भी मजाक उड़ाया। मैं कांग्रेस से कहना चाहता हूं, छोटे लोगों से, छोटे राज्यों से यही नफरत आपको आगे भी चुनाव में डुबोने जा रही है। आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट के नतीजों ने बीजेपी के खिलाफ वर्षों से चलाए जा रहे एक और प्रोपेगेंडा को भी ध्वस्त कर दिया है। आप सभी जानते हैं कि कुछ विरोधी दलों ने और उनके इकोसिस्टम ने हमेशा भाजपा पर एक लेबल चिपकाने की कोशिश की है। शुरुआत में बीजेपी को बनिया पार्टी कहा गया, हिंदी पट्टी की पार्टी कहा गया, फिर कहा गया कि बीजेपी सिर्फ शहरी मिडिल क्लास की पार्टी है और गांवों में कोई आधार नहीं है। समय के साथ इन सारे मिथकों को बीजेपी ने तोड़ दिया, लेकिन इसके साथ ही विरोधी दल ये कहने लगे कि आदिवासी क्षेत्रों में बीजेपी को उतना समर्थन नहीं है। पिछले 10 सालों में हमने इस भ्रम को भी तोड़ दिया है। आज देश का आदिवासी समाज ही नहीं, दलित और पिछड़े भी भाजपा के साथ है। अभी हमने गुजरात चुनाव में भी देखा है कि कैसे आदिवासी पट्टे में भाजपा को जबरदस्त जीत मिली है। साथियों, हमारे यहां बरसों तक माइनॉरिटीज को भी बीजेपी का डर दिखाया गया, देश विदेश में प्रोपेगेंडा चलाया गया, लेकिन अपप्रचार की इस झूठ की पोल गोवा के लोग खोलते रहे हैं। अब नॉर्थ ईस्ट के लोग भी इस झूठ की पोल खोलने में जुट गए हैं। नागालैंड और मेघालय में जहां बहुसंख्यक आबादी हमारे क्रिश्चियन भाई बहनों की है, वहां बीजेपी के लिए इतना जबरदस्त समर्थन लगातार बढ़ रहा है। वहीं नागालैंड में लगातार दूसरी बार हमें गठबंधन को आशीर्वाद मिला है। गोवा में भाजपा लगातार जीत पर जीत का रिकॉर्ड बना रही है। मैं जानता हूं जैसे जैसे कुछ दलों द्वारा फैलाए इस झूठ का पर्दाफाश होगा, वैसे वैसे भाजपा का और विस्तार होता जाएगा। साथियों, कुछ दलों द्वारा पर्दे के पीछे गठबंधन करके भाजपा को बाहर रखने का खेल भी आज देश देख रहा है। जनता देख रही है कि कैसे ये राजनीतिक दल उसके साथ, नागरिकों के साथ, जनता जनार्दन के साथ छल कपट कर रहे हैं। एक राज्य में दोस्ती और दूसरे राज्य में कुश्ती, ऐसा करने वाले राजनीतिक दलों का असली चेहरा जनता के सामने आ चुका है। केरला की जनता भी ये देख रही है कि कैसे लेफ्ट और कांग्रेस दूसरे राज्यों में गठबंधन करते हैं और केरला में एक दूसरे के खिलाफ होने का ढोंग रचाते हैं। सच्चाई यही है कि ये दोनों मिले हुए हैं, दोनों मिलकर केरला को लूट रहे हैं। इसलिए मुझे विश्वास है कि आने वाले वर्षों में भी जैसे नागालैंड में हुआ है, जैसे मेघालय में हुआ है, जैसे गोवा में होता रहा है, केरला में भी भाजपा गठबंधन की सरकार बनेगी। साथियों, नॉर्थ ईस्ट की विजय ने बाकी देश के कार्यकर्ताओं में भी ऊर्जा भर दी है। देश की जनता बार बार भाजपा पर भरोसा जता रही है। हमें विनम्र भाव से आगे बढ़ना है, हमें सभी को साथ लेकर चलना है। आजादी के इस अमृत काल में भारत को विकसित बनाने के लिए सबका प्रयास आवश्यक है। आइए यहां से हम दोगुनी ताकत से राष्ट्र निर्माण में जुट जाएं। त्रिपुरा, नागालैंड और मेघालय की जनता का मैं फिर से एक बार हृदयपूर्वक आभार व्यक्त करता हूं, उनका अभिनंदन करता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी। मोदी जी जय श्री राम। मोदी जी जय श्री राम। पूर्वोत्तर की जीत हमारी है। भारत माता की। अभी आदरणीय दुष्यंत जी कुछ सूचना देंगे आपके लिए।
सभी कार्यकर्ताओं से निवेदन है, भोजन की व्यवस्था है, नीचे भोजन कर जाएंगे सभी कार्यकर्ता।
तो जैसे सबसे तेज आपकी टैगलाइन है, तो इसी तरह से सबसे तेज हमारी सरकार की लाइफलाइन है।
Thank Mr. Puri.
I thank you for giving me the chance to address you.
Terrorism now a global issue.
The First Lady position is so unusual.
Never in my career did I ever see that love and affection in any other country than we saw in India in '79.
Pakistan has been responsible chronically for association with sponsorship of terrorist groups.
Hola from yet another day at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Now, quick weather update. It's gotten much better outside. Sunny days are here in Barcelona. Less chilly, but it's the opposite story inside the Fira here at the Mobile World Congress. A lot of the launches have already happened. So that excitement, that anxiety, that trepidation has sort of fizzled out here at MWC Barcelona. When I speak to some of the CEOs and some of the C-suite executives exclusively for Business Today, we found out that a lot of that action has been happening behind closed door. And some of the biggest customer engagements, partnerships are all taking place here at MWC because this is a big one. It's back after a long hiatus with such scale and at such a scale here in Barcelona. There's nearly 80,000 attendees, several exhibitors, of course a lot of them coming from China and the US as well. So this has become a true meeting ground for all tech enthusiasts and for the tech business at large. Now, in terms of things that we've seen over here, we've seen a bunch of phones and a bunch of launches like the Xiaomi 13 Pro, the Realme fast charging device, a OnePlus concept device, which I'm not quite sure will ever be a reality, but let's see about that. But the real showstopper over the course of the past few days has been at this stall, the Motorola stall. It's the Moto Riser concept. Absolutely mind-blowing tech. Imagine rollable tech in the palm of your hand. We can only hope that this becomes a reality very soon. We showed it to you exclusively on the first day and of course on our social media channels. But now we have an exclusive hands-on with the device. Have a look. The Motorola Riser concept that we hope will soon be a reality. What makes this phone really special is the minute you give it a double tap on that side, the rollable display now expands to this. Tap it twice again. And like that, just like magic, it's back to this traditional form. Now, there's a lot of use cases for something like this. I think rollable displays are something which will work in the future. We've seen how foldables are really hotting up as a space, even in India and on tech today. We've seen the Oppo Find N2 Flip and the Samsung Galaxy Flip 4, the Fold. There's all sorts of devices here at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, but we have this concept phone in the flesh on tech today. There's also a few other things that this phone can do. For instance, if you flick it twice like this, and now it's just, well, the rear camera, and I want to suddenly start using the front camera. There you go, I flick it again, and here's the front camera. And if you notice, when I did that, this display was untouched. It rolled further out there, the camera is revealed, as is the earpiece. You flick it back again, and there you go.
Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Co-presented by Panasonic, create today, enrich tomorrow. Co-powered by CH, it helps. Co-powered by Sera, this is your space, play it your way.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today. This is your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. Tonight we're going to decode the elections from the 3 northeastern states that have come out. Verdict 2023's first big fallout. What does it tell us? Also, that big verdict that's come from the Supreme Court. Will the Election Commission now be truly independent? All that and more. But first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. It's a big day for the BJP in the northeast. The party retains Tripura, sweeps Nagaland with ally NDPP, doubles its tally in Meghalaya. The Prime Minister calls it a win for the BJP's northeast outreach, says the lotus continues to bloom. Conrad Sangma set to become Chief Minister of Meghalaya once again, likely to partner with the BJP after having fought them during the elections. Congress wins in a BJP stronghold of Kasba Pet in the Maharashtra by-poll, sends a strong message that the MVA alliance could challenge the BJP. The BJP retained Chinchwad. The Congress also wins by-polls in Tamil Nadu and Bengal. Supreme Court sends a strong message to the Modi government, calls for the Election Commission to be kept independent, says Chief Election Commissioner must be appointed like a CBI chief, along with the leader of the opposition and a court representative. Supreme Court orders a time-bound SEBI probe on manipulation of stock prices in the Adani Hindenburg case, says report to expert panel within 2 months. Adani welcomes move, says truth will prevail. No consensus on Ukraine war at G20 foreign ministers meet. India says war is a make or break issue for the global south. Dr. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart discuss the Ladakh standoff in a crucial bilateral. UP court awards life imprisonment to Hathras convict Sandeep, drops charges against 3 other accused 3 years after the rape and murder of a 19-year-old Dalit girl in Hathras. Bulldozers roll into Prayagraj for the second straight day. Another house linked to Umesh Pal murder accused and aid to gangster Atiq Ahmed is raised. Australia needs 76 runs to win the indoor test after India is bundled out to 163 on the second day. Nathan Lyon picks up 8 wickets for 64 runs. But the big story coming in this evening is the BJP's big victory in the northeast, which has been celebrated by the party at its headquarters by Prime Minister Modi, who in a victory speech a short while ago has said that the lotus is now blooming across the northeast. The Prime Minister has targeted the Congress, went to the extent of saying his rivals want him dead, but the people of the country want him to stay. The Prime Minister says the Congress is declining because it undermined the northeast, treated it like an ATM. The Prime Minister says Northeast won, next target Kerala. So clearly the lotus, according to the Prime Minister, could bloom deep south as well, is his hope. Of course, all of this comes on the backdrop of all that's happened today, but let's listen in first to Prime Minister Modi.
चुनाव जीतने से भी ज्यादा मुझे इस बात का संतोष है कि प्रधानमंत्री के कार्यकाल में बार बार नॉर्थ ईस्ट जाकर के मैंने उनके दिलों को जीता है और वो मेरे लिए सबसे बड़ी जीत है। मुझे ये संतोष भी हुआ कि पूर्वोत्तर के लोगों को ये एहसास हो रहा है कि अब उनकी उपेक्षा नहीं होती। केंद्र की भाजपा सरकार में नॉर्थ ईस्ट के राज्यों को भी उतना ही महत्व मिलता है। कुछ हमारे विशेष शुभचिंतक भी हैं। इन विशेष शुभचिंतक जिनके पेट में ये सोच सोच करके दर्द होता है कि बीजेपी की जीत का राज क्या है, लेकिन ऐसे हर शुभचिंतक को मैं बीजेपी की सफलता का रहस्य बताना चाहता हूं। भाजपा के विजय अभियान का रहस्य छिपा है त्रिवेणी में। त्रिवेणी यानी 3 धाराओं का संगम। इस त्रिवेणी की पहली शक्ति है भाजपा सरकारों का कार्य। इस त्रिवेणी की दूसरी शक्ति है भाजपा सरकारों की कार्य संस्कृति, और इस त्रिवेणी की तीसरी शक्ति है भाजपा के कार्यकर्ताओं का सेवा भाव।
So let's give you the numbers. What exactly happened today? Let's go state by state and look at how the BJP today scored, at least in Tripura, for example, a big victory, because while they are down by 11 seats compared to 2018, they still get a majority of 33. 14 seats to the left Congress alliance. But the real spoiler in a way for the opposition, if you would want to call it that, was the Tripura Mota. The tribal party got 13 seats. Had they tied up with the Congress left, they could have given the BJP a fight. The BJP actually went down by 11 seats and 11% in Tripura, but did just about enough because of a divided opposition to win the state, retain Tripura. Then we turn to Nagaland. Now in Nagaland, traditionally you've seen the state parties, regional parties do very well. This time 37 seats to the NDPP BJP alliance. So the alliance of the NDPP with the BJP was the major party. 2 seats went to the Naga People's Front, but 21 to others, which interestingly includes 6 for the Nationalist Congress Party, 2 for Ramdas Athawale's party. Now, very often in Tripura, individual candidates matter, and these candidates are mainly in the others group. So the BJP will be in power sharing, but Nefu Rio, the NDPP leader, will continue as the chief minister. And in Meghalaya, it was Conrad Sangma who was the star of the day, because when you look at the numbers in a 60-seat Meghalaya, Conrad Sangma's party got as many as 26 seats, which is quite a remarkable performance in a state used to hung assemblies. 5 seats are with the Congress, 5 with the Trinamool Congress, among the that is in the 25 group, and 3 to the BJP. So net, Conrad Sangma and the BJP and the smaller parties will form a coalition government. Conrad Sangma, the big winner in the state of Meghalaya. So that's the big picture. The BJP will have its tent in Nagaland, in Meghalaya, and will be in power on its own in Tripura. No wonder the Prime Minister is celebrating, or the BJP is celebrating. Rahul Srivastava, National Affairs Editor, and Kaushik Deka, Executive Editor at India Today magazine, join us to give us a quick update on what they see as the big takeaway. Rahul, what's your biggest takeaway? Is it lotus blooming in these states, or is it that a divided opposition will always mean advantage BJP?
Rasif, a few very important takeaways. Small states, but very critical. Now, the entire map of Northeast, if you look at it, the BJP has its fingers in power directly or indirectly in all 8 of them. That's not a small feat compared to 2014, when the BJP was virtually non-existent. Now, if you look at the larger national picture, what have we been talking about? The BJP has found itself become more acceptable to minorities, that is Christians in Nagaland, though to the political party or the affiliates like NDPP. They have no objections to BJP, which is largely called a anti-minority party in North India and other regions of the country. That's a feat for the BJP. Now, if the BJP is winning back Tripura, it has won largely because of the fact that there was a very interesting polarization between the tribal vote and the Bengali vote because of the Mota. So the BJP walks away with the Bengali vote, not the Trinamool Congress. Interestingly,
no, but the BJP,
this is
let
lies
me
that while
correct
the
you there.
BJP
The
has
fact
done
though
well,
is, there is a small, the BJP has lost 11% of the vote, including in Bengali areas. So the BJP has benefited in Tripura from a divided opposition.
see, it is divided, but still that polarization has worked, because if you see, the tribal vote has largely gone to
the Tripura
voter now this time around. Then if you look at it, we are looking at the larger picture, Rajdeep. The opposition, Trinamool Congress does not do very well in both the states. It planned to expand, and like in Goa, it has not succeeded. The CPM vote share has fallen from 42% in Tripura to 24%. Not very good news for the left party, which has been at one time the fulcrum of opposition unity. Trinamool Congress failing to expand, Congress party not doing very well. So for the opposition and the possibilities of an opposition unity, these three elections do not bring good news.
That's a very
While for the
interesting way of
BJP,
looking at it
definitely
ahead
there
of
is some good news.
2024. Opposition unity, the Trinamool Congress has taken a hit in both Meghalaya and in Tripura. The Congress left alliance has not quite worked in Tripura. Kaushik Deka, what's your biggest takeaway?
There are some corrections. BJP hasn't lost 11 percentile vote share, because BJP has lost 6 percentile vote share in Tripura. It has come down to 38. It was 44 last time, and only 4 seats.
No, with the ally. Kaushik, with the ally, IPFT, they have lost 11%. Yeah, with their ally, yes, they have lost 11%. So we have to go by the alliance.
Okay, if we talk primarily about BJP, in fact, it's a better performance than last time, for the simple reason that last time, because of the alliance with IPFT, they had a sway in the tribal areas. This time, Tripura Mota took away 13 seats in the tribal areas. So despite that, they have managed to win 32 seats. So it's, I think, is a mandate for the developmental work and the welfare schemes of BJP. Now, another interesting point is we are avoiding Nagaland. In Nagaland, BJP contested only 20 seats and they got 12 out of that. Last time also they had got 12, and they actually had wanted more seats from NDPP, the state unit of BJP. But the central unit did not give in to that. And now the state unit may actually say they are proved right, because NDPP strike rate is lesser than BJP strike rate. They contested in 40 seats, they got 25 seats, which is 1 seat lesser than last time. And more importantly, last time NDPP was not as strong as it is today, because it has already gobbled up the stronger party, NPF. Despite NPF, NDPP, most of the leaders had joined NDPP. Despite that strength
and also in a Christian-dominated state, the BJP has done well both in Nagaland and to some extent Meghalaya.
Yes, Meghalaya, I'll come to that. But in Nagaland, there is a possibility that Rio may get wiped off later in the term, because there are 23 members who belong to others. Someone is LJP, someone is JDU, someone is NCP. So these are, you also know that these are not organic parties, in the sense that these are all leftovers of other parties who just join a party to get a banner or a ticket.
Your takeaway of Meghalaya.
So the Meghalaya is, BJP has remained in 2 seats only, but the performance of Conrad Sangma has to be appreciated, because it was, he faced anti-incumbency, he faced BJP onslaught. There was an emerging TMC which ran a very high-profile campaign. Despite all that, and in Meghalaya, it doesn't happen quite often, that he has actually increased his numbers from 19
so he calls the shots.
26.
So you believe that Meghalaya will see a Conrad Sangma BJP alliance, but with Conrad Sangma calling the shots very quickly?
No, I do not think so. BJP will be equally at power, for the simple reason that BJP is in power at the center, and Conrad Sangma will also keep BJP happy so that he can run the government smoothly. Otherwise, if he tries to become high-headed, then you know how BJP functions. Over there also, they can gobble up other MLAs.
So you're saying that he will go back to the BJP, and
he has already gone back to BJP.
I have run completely out of time at the moment, but clearly today is a big day for the BJP in the Northeast. They are expanding in all states that have gone to the polls, and that gives them reason, as you saw with the Prime Minister's statements, reason to look forward to this big election year. Kaushik Deka and Rahul Srivastav, appreciate your joining us. Let's turn from there to the other big story of the day, which came from the Supreme Court, which today in a landmark judgment has framed the rules for the appointment for election commissioners. The Supreme Court made it clear that the Election Commission needed to be fully independent and has said a committee of the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition and the Chief Justice of India should select these commissioners. All of this puts a big question mark. Is the Election Commission in this country independent or not? It's our top talking point. First, take a look at this report.
A committee of Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and Chief Justice of India will appoint the election commissioners from now on. A 5-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court has ruled in landmark judgment. In an unanimous verdict, the Supreme Court has agreed with a petition that the appointment of CEC and ECs must be done on the line of appointment done for CBI Director. The top court said that this must be done to make the commission more independent and to prevent any kind of interference in its functioning.
बहुत ऐतिहासिक फैसला है जो लोकतंत्र के ऊपर बहुत असर डालेगा, क्योंकि आज तो हम देख रहे थे कि इलेक्शन कमीशन बिल्कुल सरकार के इशारों पर नाच रहा था और उसका एक कारण ये था कि सरकार जिसको चाहे बना देती थी.
The bench headed by Justice K.M. Joseph highlighted the role of money power and criminalization of politics.
In a scathing comment on India's current political scenario, the Supreme Court has said that an election commission must be independent and cannot claim merely to be independent while acting in an unfair manner. At the same time, the court has said that the vast powers available with the election commission must be exercised in a constitutional and legal manner. This comes even as the Supreme Court has laid down the process by which the EC and the CEC must be appointed.
The opposition hailed the Supreme Court verdict, calling it a much-needed step.
Supreme Court verdict, I welcome heartily. They can only save the country right now. It is only Supreme Court, our highest judiciary, who are the pillar of the democracy, who are our protector. Only Supreme Court can protect our democracy.
Supreme Court judgment slams the hegemonic, the control freak approach of this government towards institutions.
The Supreme Court order has put the focus once again on the independence of the EC amid a shrill cry from the opposition repeatedly that the institution, along with other agencies, have been compromised. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's raise some big questions then. Will this Supreme Court ruling make the Election Commission truly independent? Will the Election Commission now have a free hand? Has the Supreme Court overreached? Some of the questions we'll raise. Joining me now, Dr. S.Y. Qureshi, former Chief Election Commissioner, is with us. Siddharth Luthra, Senior Supreme Court lawyer, with us. Supriya Srinath of the Congress. And Jaiprakash Narayan, founder Lok Satta, a movement that has tried to look for election reforms among other issues. First, you, Dr. Qureshi, how do you see the Supreme Court saying that the Election Commissioner will have to be appointed like a CBI chief, even wants the funding of the Election Commission to be taken out of the Law Ministry, separate secretariat? Is this somewhere suggesting that the court believes that the EC is not independent?
Well, these are reforms which Election Commission or the incumbents during the incumbency or post-retirement have been demanding for 20 years. I've written several articles. Even as CEC in media interviews, I had said that I would have felt stronger if Leader of Opposition was a party to my appointment. Because the perceptions are very important, because that will create the perception that this guy is non-political and is accepted across party lines, which is very important. And as Rajiv, as I have said many times, that the most powerful election commission of the world has had the most defective system of appointment. We are the only country in the world where the government of the day appoints anybody. I was a beneficiary of that, but I've been fighting against it all these years. Now, the least they have is the collegium system. Somewhere there are select committees of parliament who appoint. In some cases, the entire parliament debates and interviews the candidate. In some cases, the candidates are interviewed on national television. That is how, even in the US, as you know, the constitutional appointments and even ambassadors' appointment is approved by the Senate. So this wider approval of the nation is extremely important for an institution.
No, so
like
are you saying that this new system, you are saying, Dr. Qureshi, will create the perception at least that the election commission is independent just because now we have a leader of opposition and CJI involved in the appointments? And does that mean that the perception until now was that the election commissioners were basically government appointees?
Well, we were government appointees, and the fact is that people were often raising fingers also. Oh, this guy is an appointee of this government, surely will be soft on this government and will do the bidding of this government. We heard it so many times. At least that possibility of allegation will now disappear if this system comes into operation. Okay. But let me also, mention, the director of CBI was appointed by a split verdict of 2-1. Leader of opposition had not approved. I hope that when the parliament comes in, they will make it a unanimous decision. Because if leader of opposition has opposed a candidate, then not only the problem will persist, it will actually aggravate.
That's an interesting viewpoint, that whoever is appointed, the government and the opposition must be on the same page, not just 2-1, as has often happened with CBI cases. But Supriya Srinath, the BJP has chosen not to come on this debate because there has been a rap on the knuckles from the Supreme Court to the Modi government, suggesting somewhere that the government was diluting the independence of the Election Commission. But can you cross your heart and say the Congress didn't do the same? BJP leaders tell me what were, there were chief election commissioners even during Congress rule who were seen. MS Gill became a minister in a Congress government later. So can the Congress truly say that this is a problem that has only started post 2014?
No, let me first put on record here that why is the BJP not on this show? The BJP is not on the show because the government of the day, the Modi government, opposed this tooth and nail. There are writings of the judgment right before me, and they kept saying that the mechanism is so robust that you do not need anything, there's nothing rogue that happens. There are three things that I see in this judgment, and I will answer your direct question in just a bit. There are three big things. The first big thing is that the Supreme Court has effectively taken the control of an election, ensuring its free and fair play from the executive. The second is the timing, and I think that's very important because there are repeat offences as far as this government and the Prime Minister himself is concerned on the electoral process, whether it's blatant rules of violation on which the Commission has really done precious little. And the third is reminding India's election watchdog that you are responsible for free and fair elections and you have a position in democracy to ensure that. And I think on all those three counts, this judgment should be lauded. To answer your direct question, look at the kind of offences that have happened, Rajdeep, and I can give you instances after instances. A private company collecting election data in Karnataka, the government and the Election Commission choose to look the other way. An MLA in Karnataka are openly bribing voters. Multiple lakhs of complaints before the commission, but not one action taken against the powerful men in this government. An election commissioner compelled to give a dissenting view on the Prime Minister flagging rules, but the commission does nothing. I can go on and on about this, but the reality is that in the last 8.5-9 years, rules pertaining to free and fair elections have been violated. This should be welcome, and not because this is Congress versus the BJP. No matter which party is in power, India's elections need to be independent, free and fair, not just by conduct,
you fully support this judgment
as well.
Okay, so you fully support this judgment as a step forward. But Siddharth Luthra, there will be those who will say that the judges have overreached. That tomorrow, the judges themselves appoint themselves. Judges of the Supreme Court appoint themselves. The collegium system is under question, but they are telling everyone else to be independent. How do you respond to that?
So let me answer that as a lawyer. We must understand that this judgment seeks to rely upon an old principle in the Vishaka case, where it said that if there is no mechanism, the Supreme Court can step in, create a mechanism till the legislature steps in. Now, the the Constitution says there can be laws to regulate this, the functionality and the appointments of the election commissioners. But the Supreme Court has perceived that there was a gap. And what's interesting about this decision is there are arguments made both for the case, which was made by the petitioners, and also by the intervener and by the Solicitor General, the additional Solicitor General, and the Attorney General, saying that, look, there is a mechanism and the court should not legislate. So the legal question that we need to consider is, should judicial legislation be acceptable? Is it the appropriate method or not? Let me just tell you that while there have been decisions in the recent past 2 judges, 3 judges decisions saying that the Supreme Court can lay down guidelines, but the fact is that in 2002, a 7-judge bench decision was very clear in P. Ramachandra Rao that the courts do not possess the power to legislate. They cannot give directions. That was in the context of laying down timelines for conclusion of criminal trials, that you can't legislate. So that's the legal part. Now, the other interesting thing about this judgment is that it takes into considerations instances of appointment and how certain candidates were considered, the timing, etc. So it becomes a very fact-based understanding. After all, judges are not immune to what happens in the world. They had occasion, obviously, to see the relevant files. They're not immune to what the environment is. Thirdly, I must also add is, the point is, when the Constitution came into being, we've had over 100-odd amendments, but the fact is, we all, opposition and governments in power, parliament in essence, has to get about to do its business to ensure that we have robust, independent regulators, independent constitutional authorities, because that will add to our constitution. So it's not a case of one or the other. The pot calling the kettle black is what I would say, really, because you can't have one party. So today people are lauding the government. The people laud the government, but it's the same parties will have criticized the Supreme Court in an earlier era. The point is, the court has tried to see that there is a issue which it wants to resolve.
No, but you don't believe it's an overreach. Very quickly, you don't see it as overreach. You don't see that the judges are you might as well give the entire executive power then to the judiciary today.
Rajdeep, I have a concern about judicial legislation, which I raised at the outset. I believe it is not appropriate, and that's across the board. Having said that, there are moments when courts will come forward to point out certain things. I know, but can I to say that there is a lacuna or a gap in the system?
Can I stop you for a moment?
Seems to have happened.
I take your point, but can I stop you for a moment? Because Jaiprakash Narayan, you know what the concern is? This is the same Supreme Court which has sat on the more critical matter, some believe, of electoral bonds. Opaque bonds that have resulted in one party getting a huge advantage. The matter is before the court. The court doesn't decide on that, but is happy to say that change the way election commissioners are appointed. Do you really believe that the appointment system will make election commissioners more independent?
Rajdeep, our institutions are obviously flawed. You outlined some in the Supreme Court, many other institutions. Nevertheless, our democracy is still robust. We must recognize that. The flaws must be corrected. I have been most vociferous in the past 27, 28 years in outlining the defects in our democracy and fighting for reform. It doesn't mean our democracy is illegitimate or completely lacks credibility. I want to make that point first. Second, the word you used is important, perceptions. I think our elections have been conducted remarkably well for a desperately poor country, largely illiterate, with no serious democratic experience in conducting elections in the past before independence. I think our election commissions, right from Sukumar Sen in 1950, have done a fantastic job. Because the commissioner is not the chief election commissioner or the 2 other commissioners. It's the whole body of public servants who may be flawed in the normal governance, but do a remarkable job as a matter of culture and practice over the past 50, 60 years in conducting elections.
I take your point, but is that, with due regard, sir, where is the level playing field? The level playing field doesn't exist if you have one party getting 80 or 85% of electoral bonds. If the Supreme Court is so concerned about ensuring a level playing field, why don't they tackle that?
No, I will happily address that. These are different issues. First, because there are now concerns about the conduct of elections, independence of EC. as a responsible citizen fighting for democracy and electoral reform, I think it's my duty to state that elections on the whole are robust.
Fair enough.
It doesn't mean there's no money power. It doesn't mean there's no criminalization. It doesn't mean there's no centralization of parties. It doesn't mean there are 100 flaws in our political process. They're outside the domain of conduct of elections and election commission. Neither election commission nor Supreme Court is God. They're not the answers to all the flaws of democracy. I want to state that first.
Fair enough.
Now, because you raised a specific question about the funding, let me tell you the details at what happened. Because I am in many ways the architect of the funding law in 2003 after the Tehelka scam. I met every single major leader in government and opposition and persuaded them. Let's take a small little step. We can't address the illegitimate money and vote buying in politics by this, but at least legitimate money required for legitimate politics. Let's create a window. All parties came together. Congress formed a committee with Dr. Manmohan Singh to look at party finances. NDA, BJP accepted Manmohan Singh committee's recommendations in toto. A unanimous law was enacted. Mr. L.K. Adani gave a directive to his party. I was told authoritatively by the late Arun Jaitley repeatedly, who was the law minister at the time the law was enacted. He gave a directive that now that there is full taxation available, let us not collect cash for party functioning. Within 3 months, the receipts fell by 90% despite their being in power. There's a bigger problem. It's outside the election funding.
Okay.
People have no faith that if they are seen to be funding a political party openly, they will not be harassed or humiliated or hurt economically.
So you're saying treat that as a separate problem. The money power issue will have to be tackled separately.
Absolutely, and it requires dramatic change.
Okay.
Electoral bonds is a minor issue.
I take your point. I take your point. I was only...
Let me complete, because there has to be clarity on this.
Yes.
Electoral bonds money, significant though it appears, is a minuscule in the election expenditure.
Okay.
95% is about vote buying and illegitimate purposes. In the recent by-election in Telangana for one assembly constituency, 400 crores was spent. More than the total expenditure incurred in the British parliamentary election by the two major parties and all the 1,300 candidates of all the 650 constituencies.
400 crores you're saying was spent on one by-election in Telangana. Okay,
I'm stating publicly.
I have limited time because we've got a major interview coming up in a moment with the US Secretary of State, but I just want final comments very quickly. Dr. Qureshi, let me give you an example though of what happened to Ashok Lavasa, who was a election commissioner. He had a dissenting note against Prime Minister Modi and he was moved out and he was with the Asian Development Bank. Do you believe as a result of what the Supreme Court has done, all of that will stop? Do you actually believe that the government will stop interfering in the functioning of the Election Commission?
I think the Supreme Court has not given a judgment but has suggested for enactment the removal process to be addressed, where these two election commissioners should be protected from removal like the CEC. And this has been a historical flaw because when the Constitution was framed, that Chief Election Commissioner was protected from removal except through impeachment. Now that protection was not for an individual. It was for the institution.
So you're saying all election commissioners must have that protection only through impeachment. Am I correct?
If that was the case, Ashok Lavasa would not have been removed.
Oh, I take your point. Supriya Srinath, you've been dying to get in, but I will give you a final point. Can I be assured that if there is a Congress government, we don't know when that will happen at the center in the future, that they will abide by these rules that the court sets? Very quickly, Supriya.
2024. Look no further. 2024. Just to answer your wondering part of it. But actually, I want to take the argument forward and say that a similar rule should be applied as far as the appointment of the ED director is concerned. A panel appoints the CBI chief, a panel appoints the CVC, a panel appoints the NHRC chairman and the Lokpal. Why should ED director be an exception? Because quite frankly, the blatant and the brazen illegal extensions and violations that have happened in that particular position's appointment is for everybody to see. We should actually extend this to ED. And
okay,
to your point about electoral bonds,
I take your point. No, Supriya, I've run out of time. You're saying I extend the same rule to the enforcement director. Siddharth Luthra, just 30 seconds. Do you believe this rule should be there, therefore, for the ED director as well tomorrow?
I believe it is important that all persons in authority, such as the ED director, their appointments must be regulated. It must be protected, because eventually liberty is sacrosanct. And if we have unchartered authority and power given to individuals holding positions where they can put people under coercive processes, you are going to have problem, and you see it in the reach of these agencies.
And what about judges? 10 seconds. What about judges? When will the day come when judges will also have to be put through a process of regulation where they don't appoint their own?
So that issue was tried in the NJC. It is not successful. The way the law minister has been saying, I don't think the day is far away when they're going to try and bring in a modified and updated version of the NJC.
Okay, so we'll wait and see if Parliament now strikes back and decides that even judges cannot appoint their own, just as the judges have said the election commissioners cannot be appointed only by the government. I appreciate all my panelists joining us on this critical issue on a day, of course, when we've had a big election. Now, the other big story also came from the Supreme Court, which has ordered a review of the regulatory mechanism governing the Indian capital market. The apex court, in its verdict on the Adani Hindenburg case, has now appointed a 6-member committee headed by a retired High Court Chief Justice, along with the likes of Nandan Nilekani, to ensure that SEBI conducts a probe into whether the Adani Group or other companies contravene capital market regulations, and give its verdict inside 2 months in a sealed envelope. Take a look.
For a man who has lost $80 billion this year, the worst is not yet over for Gautam Adani. The billionaire entrepreneur now has not one but 2 high-level probes into his business affairs. And both the probes are monitored by none other than the Supreme Court. The apex court passed its judgment after hearing several petitions concerning the loss of investor wealth due to the massive plunge in Adani Group stocks. Total wealth erosion due to sell-off triggered by Hindenburg research report has topped 12 lakh crore rupees last week. In a crucial order, the Supreme Court set up a 6-member committee headed by retired High Court Chief Justice. The committee comprises known industry figures like banker K.V. Kamath and technocrat Nandan Nilekani. The committee has been tasked with providing an overall assessment of the situation, including causes and factors which led to volatility in the security market. The panel will also suggest measures to strengthen investor awareness. It will investigate if there has been regulatory failure in dealing with the alleged contravention of laws in relation to Adani Group and other companies. The panel will also suggest measures to strengthen the statutory and regulatory framework. Meanwhile, capital markets regulator SEBI will continue its existing probe into the Adani Hindenburg case. It has, however, been asked to investigate whether there has been a violation of the minimum shareholding laws. SEBI has also been asked by the Supreme Court to look into whether there has been a failure to disclose transactions with related parties in the Adani case. The regulator will look into whether there was any manipulation of stock prices in contravention of existing laws as well. The court has made it clear that its directions will not limit the contours of the ongoing SEBI investigation. Both the committee and SEBI have been asked to submit their report into Adani's affairs to the Supreme Court in 2 months. Gautam Adani welcomed the probe, tweeting that the order will bring finality in a time-bound manner, adding that the truth will prevail. The markets also welcomed the Supreme Court verdict, sending all 10 Adani Group shares into the green. The flagship Adani Enterprises closed up 2.8%. 5 of the 10 stocks hit the upper circuit. The surge in the group stocks added 30,000 crore rupees to the group market cap.
The next 2 months will be crucial as these reports will be filed before the court. After 2 months, it will be a big question for the Indian markets and the Indian investors as to what really went wrong and what will be done to tighten the system in the country. In New Delhi, with cameraman Ajay Thakur, this is Anisha Mathur for Business Today.
Okay, let's take a break at this point. On the other side, our exclusive tonight with our newsmaker. The US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken speaks to my colleague Geeta Mohan. That's coming up on the other side. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
I think there's an opportunity for India particularly to work with the United States and others.
India is has the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world.
I thought if it's blowing in the wind, it's best I'm on the motorcycle. And I did 15,000 kilometers in 36 days.
The rich countries have a particular obligation to exercise their investment in innovation.
I believe that global business has the money and the power.
Improvements in the way we understand the importance of education and healthcare.
You have a greater chance of killing yourself than of being killed by any soldier or terrorist or criminal.
There are some big names in the art world, like the ones from the progressive modern masters like Raza, Souza, Gaitonde, Hussain, etc. Some collect them as assets, some as vanity, some for the snob value, some for the emotional appeal. They appreciate well and fetch returns. Same with select contemporary artworks. Then there is a whole pool of emerging contemporary artists who cannot just be viewed from the lens of valuations. One such artist at the India Art Fair happened to be Vikrant Pisse. His art reiterates his commitment to the revolutionary spirit of Babasaheb Ambedkar. His work focuses on making powerful social commentary, the fabric of revolutionary times exuded. From his work, the call to action to uphold constitutional rights, to a social commentary on casteism with the Dalits in India, to depicting the landmark Rohit Vermila suicide case, the artist is working on a series on the legacy of the Dalit Panther movement in India. His iconography is informed and deliberate in radicality. A force of change to reckon with, Bhise's work stands out at the India Art Fair. In New Delhi, Chaiti Narula for India Today.
Welcome back to tonight's India Today exclusive. Along the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers Summit in the national capital, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down for an exclusive conversation with India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan. From the Russia and Ukraine war to US-India ties, listen in to excerpts from this interview.
This is an India Today World exclusive. The most prominent voice from the G20 ministerial is joining us here on India Today today. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, many thanks for joining us and doing this.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
The G20 presidency has begun at a tumultuous time. There are so many differences. You've been speaking about it. We've heard various leaders at various press conferences address the same issue. But the bigger question over here is that despite all the conversations and heated exchanges that we've been hearing about, there still is no consensus on the Russia-Ukraine war, no consensus on the communique. Now, in that, I'd like to know how and why has the West failed in isolating Russia? Why do I say that? Because Russia is still in the room, and in fact, you actually met the Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov.
So first, I think it's very clear in a variety of ways that Russia is isolated in terms of its aggression against Ukraine. Go back a couple of weeks ago, 141 countries, 3/4 of the United Nations, stood up in the General Assembly and voted for a resolution condemning Russia's aggression and calling for a just and durable peace in Ukraine. Here at the G20, the foreign ministers meeting, if you look at the chair's statement that was put out by India, It reflects on the part of 18 of the 20 countries, that is every country except for Russia and China, the very language that was used by the leaders in the Bali meetings just a few months ago in terms of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. So I think world opinion is very, very clear on this. And in the meetings today, I think it's also fair to say that a number of countries again called on Russia to end its aggression. And, you know, this is a concern not just for Ukraine, not just for countries in Europe. It's a concern for the entire world because the consequences of Russia's aggression are being felt around the world. People are feeling it in terms of higher energy prices, higher food prices, and countries are feeling it in a different way because there's been an assault not just on Ukraine, but on the principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter, principles that are necessary for trying to keep the peace around the world, like one country can't simply go and try and take over another, erase its borders, erase its identity. So I think it's very clear where the world is on this, and that was reflected here again in New Delhi.
But the aggression continues, and there is no stopping them. G20 has not been able to. US sanctions have not been able to. So when we talk about isolation, we're talking about absolute isolation of a country that is an aggressor. And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case here.
Well, I think if you look at what's actually happened, the Ukrainian people, with a lot of support from countries around the world, have actually stopped what Russia was trying to do. Russia was trying to erase Ukraine from the map, to absorb it into Russia, to make it so that it didn't exist anymore. That has failed, and it's failed because the Ukrainian people stood up and because so much of the world came to help Ukraine in defending itself. Since then, since that initial attempt to eliminate Ukraine as an independent country failed, Russia has been pushed back in Ukraine to the east and to the south. The Ukrainians have taken back more than 50% of the territory that Russia seized from it early on in the aggression. Unfortunately, tragically, Russia is persisting. It's true, it hasn't stopped. But as it's doing that, it is suffering tremendously. President Putin has inflicted terrible damage not only on Ukraine, but on his own country. Public accounts say that Russia has suffered 200,000 casualties, killed and wounded in Ukraine. And he keeps throwing bodies into this war, a war of his own making. More than 1 million Russians have left the country. Right. They tend to be the most educated and most sophisticated in building a modern economy. 1,000 companies from around the world have left Russia. They're not doing business there because the reputational cost of doing business has gotten to be too great. So all of those things, as well as the sanctions and export controls, are having an increasingly heavy weight on Russia. But ultimately, yes, the objective is to get it to stop the aggression and to restore Ukraine's full sovereignty. And that requires that we continue to support Ukraine and continue to exert pressure on Russia.
And it will take time. But you're here in New Delhi, and concerns of New Delhi and India are a little different. We're talking about China here. Do you think, because of this war, the focus has shifted from China and Chinese aggression, whether it is against Taiwan, India, or for that matter, now we see Chinese spy balloons in American airspace? Is that a concern? How do you see America counter China? And how do you see America continue being a net security provider for the world?
On the contrary, I'm seeing two things. First, as I mentioned, even as so many countries are working to support Ukraine, they're also working together, including here at the G20, to address global problems of concern to people around the world. And I mentioned a few of them, from food insecurity to energy insecurity to climate to global health, including in the wake of COVID, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. At the same time, I actually think that what Russia has done in Ukraine has awakened other parts of the world to concerns about other would-be aggressors. And the very reason that so many countries beyond Europe are standing up against Russia's aggression is because they know that if we let that aggression stand with impunity, then other would-be aggressors might say, well, if Russia can get away with it, so can we, so can I. And that, I think, is a powerful motivator. At the same time, tomorrow we'll be meeting with our partners in the Quad, Australia, Japan, and India. And I'm very much looking forward to that because we've done a lot of work to focus on issues of common concern to us in the Indo-Pacific. And the United States is deeply engaged throughout the Indo-Pacific with a shared goal that we have with India, with Japan, with Australia, but also with most of the countries in the region, and that is to make sure that we maintain a free, open, prosperous Indo-Pacific. And there are so many things that we're doing together to ensure that we're able to do that.
Okay, let's leave it there. We have more of that interview coming up at 10 p.m. With the U.S. Secretary of State. I leave you with the image of the day, the newsmaker of the day, Conrad Sangma. His father, Purnio Sangma, was Lok Sabha Speaker, but today his son has gone where his father couldn't. Not only has he won a 5-year term, he is now poised to come back again for a potential second term in office. He is the big winner on this day where the Northeast was the center of attention. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night. Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Have seen Iron Man Tony Stark wear it to reach war zones. You have seen Shah Rukh Khan and John Abraham wage a war in the sky wearing these. Jetpack suits are now going to be part of military drills and rescue operations. The Indian Army will soon adopt jetpack technology. These suits will be used for enhanced tactical mobility on line of actual control amid border tensions with China. The Indian Aerospace Defence News shared a demo on Twitter of its jetpack flying over a water body, buildings and fields. Soldiers will be able to fly 10 to 15 meters in the air by wearing this suit powered by a gas turbine engine. They can clock a speed of 50 km per hour. Jetpacks were the center of attraction at the Aero India 2023 held recently.
अगर टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में बात करेंगे, ये पूरा टर्बोजेट इंजन से चलता है. इसका डीजल फ्यूल है. हमने डीजल इसलिए चूज किया कि डीजल का जो फ्लैश पॉइंट एंड फायर पॉइंट है वो नॉर्मल एविएशन फ्यूल से काफी आगे है.
Jetpacks are being tested by armed forces across the world. These videos from the UK highlight the features of the technology. In the first video, one can see how a soldier lands on the deck and drops a ladder over the side for the rest of the team to climb up on. In the second, the soldier demonstrates the ability to quickly zip back and forth between the ship and the raft. And in the third, 3 jet suit jockeys land on the deck of a ship successfully. Jet suits are soon going to change the way wars are fought. Bureau Report, India Today.
Foreign ministers of the world's most powerful nations are assembling in New Delhi for a G20 meet under the cloud of the raging war in Ukraine. And the divide appears far too big to be bridged. At one end of the table are the Western nations led by the US, and at the other end, Russia backed by China. The hosts, India, will be walking the tightrope. What will be on Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar's mind is the failure at the G20 finance ministers meet in Bengaluru recently, when the group could not agree on a joint communique.
I don't think it would be really correct for me to prejudge the outcome of the G20 foreign ministers meeting. I think we should let the plenipotentiaries of the G20 foreign ministers meeting decide that on their own. For us, the questions relating to the food, energy and the fertilizer security, the impact that the conflict has on these economic challenges that we face.
How tough the task could be is evident from two statements issued by the UK and Russia. While London has said Foreign Secretary James Cleverly will call out Russian aggression in Ukraine at the meeting, Moscow says the actions of the West have put the world on the brink of a disaster. Now consider this. Two of the key players, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, have not met in person since the Ukraine war started. And the two sides have hardened their stance over the last few weeks. US President Joe Biden visited Ukraine on February 20th, declaring unwavering support to Volodymyr Zelensky.
And just today, that announcement includes artillery ammunition for HIMARS and howitzers, more javelins, anti-armor systems, air surveillance radars to help protect Ukrainian people from aerial bombardments. Later this week, we will announce additional sanctions against elites and companies that are trying to evade sanctions and backfill Russia's war machine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin hit back with a nuclear threat.
Traveling from different parts.
Armed with facts.
Co-powered by Get quick loans from Tata Capital. Volkswagen Verter.
A lot of support. Russia is still in the heavy weight on Russian industrialists.
India Today scores biggest G20 interview.
Another very important aspect of what
There's some very distinct things here that's important.
Top-level perspective on India's big rise.
It's been quite extraordinary in deepening and strengthening the strategic partnership between India and the United States. I think it's reaching unprecedented levels, and we look forward to demonstrating that further when Prime Minister Modi visits Washington in the coming time.
The world view on Ukraine, China and more.
Look at what's actually happened. The Ukrainian people, with a lot of support from countries around the world, have actually stopped what Russia was trying to do. Russia was trying to erase Ukraine from the map, to absorb it into Russia, to make it so that it didn't exist anymore. That has failed, and it's failed because the Ukrainian people stood up, and because so much of the world came to help Ukraine in defending itself.
And on the decade's biggest relationship. Biden's Secretary of State on India Today. Antony Blinken speaks to Geeta Mohan.
You're with the news here on India Today with me, Shiv Arur. Let's get you straight to the top stories we're tracking at this time. No consensus on Ukraine war at G20 foreign ministers meet in Delhi. India says war a make or break issue for global south. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart discuss the Ladakh standoff in a crucial bilateral. Big day for the BJP in the Northeast party. Retains Tripura, sweeps Nagaland with ally NDPP, doubles tally in Meghalaya. Prime Minister calls it win for BJP's Northeast outreach. Conrad Sangma set to become Chief Minister of Meghalaya again, likely to partner with BJP once again. Supreme Court sends strong message to Modi government, calls for Election Commission to be kept independent, says Chief Election Commissioner must be appointed like the CBI chief, that is, along with the Chief Justice and Leader of the Opposition on the appointments panel. Bulldozers roll into Prayagraj for a second day straight. Another house linked to Umesh Pal murder accused and aid to gangster turned Neta has been razed. It's the big interview coming out of the G20 foreign ministers meet, an agenda-setting interview from the big meeting of 20 powers of the world goes live in just 30 seconds from now. US Secretary of State has a big message for India. In this exclusive interview to our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, Antony Blinken has spoken out for the first time on the Adani Hindenburg private issue does not affect our relationship, says Secretary Blinken. He also has a big message to India on the Ukraine war, for the first time explicitly stating that the United States is seeking India's support and help on the Russia-Ukraine war issue. That big interview plays out live right now. Here's Secretary Antony Blinken in this world-exclusive interview to India Today.
This is an India Today World exclusive. The most prominent voice from the G20 ministerial is joining us here on India Today today. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, many thanks for joining us and doing this.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
The G20 presidency has begun at a tumultuous time. There are so many differences. You've been speaking about it. We've heard various leaders at various press conferences address the same issue. But the bigger question over here is that despite all the conversations and heated exchanges that we've been hearing about, there still is no consensus on the Russia-Ukraine war, no consensus on the communique. Now, in that, I'd like to know how and why has the West failed in isolating Russia? Why do I say that? Because Russia is still in the room, and in fact, you actually met the Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov.
So first, I think it's very clear in a variety of ways that Russia is isolated in terms of its aggression against Ukraine. Go back a couple of weeks ago, 141 countries, 3/4 of the United Nations, stood up in the General Assembly and voted for a resolution condemning Russia's aggression and calling for a just and durable peace in Ukraine. Here at the G20, the foreign ministers meeting, if you look at the chair's statement that was put out by India, it reflects on the part of 18 of the 20 countries, that is every country except for Russia and China, the very language that was used by the leaders in the Bali meetings just a few months ago in terms of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. So I think world opinion is very, very clear on this. And in the meetings today, I think it's also fair to say that a number of countries, again, called on Russia to end its aggression. And, you know, this is a concern not just for Ukraine, not just for countries in Europe. It's a concern for the entire world because the consequences of Russia's aggression are being felt around the world. People are feeling it in terms of higher energy prices, higher food prices, and countries are feeling it in a different way because there's been an assault not just on Ukraine, but on the principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter, principles that are necessary for trying to keep the peace around the world, like one country can't simply go and try and take over another, erase its borders, erase its identity. So I think it's very clear where the world is on this, and that was reflected here again in New Delhi.
But the aggression continues, and there is no stopping them. G20 has not been able to. US sanctions have not been able to. So when we talk about isolation, we're talking about absolute isolation of a country that is an aggressor. And that certainly doesn't seem to be the case here.
Well, I think if you look at what's actually happened, the Ukrainian people, with a lot of support from countries around the world, have actually stopped what Russia was trying to do. Russia was trying to erase Ukraine from the map, to absorb it into Russia, to make it so that it didn't exist anymore. That has failed, and it's failed because the Ukrainian people stood up and because so much of the world came to help Ukraine in defending itself. Since then, since that initial attempt to eliminate Ukraine as an independent country failed, Russia has been pushed back in Ukraine to the east and to the south. The Ukrainians have taken back more than 50% of the territory that Russia seized from it early on in the aggression. Unfortunately, tragically, Russia is persisting. It's true, it hasn't stopped. But as it's doing that, it is suffering tremendously. President Putin has inflicted terrible damage not only on Ukraine, but on his own country. Public accounts say that Russia has suffered 200,000 casualties, killed and wounded in Ukraine. And he keeps throwing bodies into this war, a war of his own making. More than 1 million Russians have left the country.
Right.
They tend to be the most educated and most sophisticated in building a modern economy. 1,000 companies from around the world have left Russia. They're not doing business there because the reputational cost of doing business has gotten to be too great. So all of those things, as well as the sanctions and export controls, are having an increasingly heavy weight on Russia. But ultimately, yes, the objective is to get it to stop the aggression and to restore Ukraine's full sovereignty. And that requires that we continue to support Ukraine and continue to exert pressure on Russia.
And it will take time. But you're here in New Delhi, and concerns of New Delhi and India are a little different. We're talking about China here. Do you think, because of this war, the focus has shifted from China and Chinese aggression, whether it is against Taiwan, India, or for that matter, now we see Chinese spy balloons in American airspace? Is that a concern? How do you see America counter China, and how do you see America continue being a net security provider for the world?
On the contrary, I'm seeing two things. First, as I mentioned, even as so many countries are working to support Ukraine, they're also working together, including here at the G20, to address global problems of concern to people around the world. And I mentioned a few of them, from food insecurity to energy insecurity to climate to global health, including in the wake of COVID, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. At the same time, I actually think that what Russia has done in Ukraine has awakened other parts of the world to concerns about other would-be aggressors. And the very reason that so many countries beyond Europe are standing up against Russia's aggression is because they know that if we let that aggression stand with impunity, then other would-be aggressors might say, well, if Russia can get away with it, so can we, so can I. And that, I think, is a powerful motivator. At the same time, tomorrow we'll be meeting with our partners in the Quad, Australia, Japan, and India. And I'm very much looking forward to that because we've done a lot of work to focus on issues of common concern to us in the Indo-Pacific. And the United States is deeply engaged throughout the Indo-Pacific with a shared goal that we have with India, with Japan, with Australia, but also with most of the countries in the region, and that is to make sure that we maintain a free, open, prosperous Indo-Pacific. And there are so many things that we're doing together to ensure that we're able to do that.
Talking about another concern that India has, there has been a lot of criticism when it comes to the Indian government with regards to certain American businessmen and short sellers who have come out with reports that have not gone down well with the government, particularly massive losses to one of India's top industrialists, Gautam Adani. And then George Soros coming out and saying that the Hindenburg report will lead to a democratic revival in India. Was this matter discussed with your Indian counterpart, Dr. Jaishankar? If so, what was your response? If not, could you weigh in on the matter?
It wasn't discussed, and I think for a very good reason. These are private matters concerning private companies, private citizens, and they don't affect the relationship between the United States and India, the government to government, and the work we're doing both directly bilaterally, but also here at the G20 in support of India's leadership. That's exactly what we focused on today, the work that we've been doing, and it's been quite extraordinary, in deepening and strengthening the strategic partnership between India and the United States. I think it's reaching unprecedented levels, and we look forward to demonstrating that further when Prime Minister Modi visits Washington in the coming time. And at the same time, today the focus was intensely on the very ambitious agenda that India has for the G20 and the support the United States is providing to that agenda.
There's another very important aspect of in the Indo-US cooperation, which is health, the health sector, COVID-19, but the prospects are grim when it comes to reports that are emerging now. The US Energy Department has concluded that COVID pandemic most likely arose from a laboratory leak. In that, you've had many agencies report to you, send out reports. What can we conclusively say that Beijing indeed is indulging in biological warfare?
There are some very distinct things here that it's important to be clear on. First, President Biden was determined from day one to get to the bottom of the origins of COVID-19, why it happened, how it happened, in order to enable us to make sure, to the greatest extent possible, that it doesn't happen again. And in doing that, he asked all of our intelligence agencies to focus their resources and their attention on this question. And what we have now, after extensive study, is some of our agencies and departments believing that COVID originated from a lab leak in Wuhan, others believing it's more likely that it originated at a animal market, also in Wuhan. None of the agencies being able to say conclusively that it was one or the other. And so the bottom line is we don't know conclusively, but of course the possibility that it originated in a lab is very clear and very real, and that's what some agencies think is more likely, again, not conclusively. But that's also separate from the question of whether this had anything to do with a biological weapon and anything to do with intentional actions by a country to develop it, use it, release it. And none of the agencies, to my knowledge, have found that.
But do you see biological warfare as a threat coming from China separately?
We have real concerns about the potential development and use of bioweapons in various places around the world. We've been working for years to try to ensure that that wouldn't happen. There's something called the Biological Weapons Convention that we're a strong adherent to, and at the same time we have programs around the world to help countries that have biological research programs for medical reasons, for example, to make sure that they are fully safe and secure.
My final question to you. The US CIRF report under your leadership has been highly critical of India when it comes to certain categories, whether it's freedom of speech or treatment of minorities. Is that an area that was covered in your bilateral meetings with Dr. Jaishankar? And if so, again, what was India's response to it?
We have an ongoing dialogue on both of our democracies and human rights, because as the world's two largest democracies, it's central to who we are. It's central to our identity. And in our own case, we've had, from day one of our own democracy, our founding fathers set as an objective to try to form a more perfect union, which is an acknowledgement that we're not perfect. We never will be, but it's in trying to do ever better on democracy, on human rights, that we make progress. And I think that's a shared commitment that both of us have. And when questions or issues come up, we discuss them directly, very openly, very freely. I think we would hold each other to account when there are concerns. And that's, I think, typical of many of our conversations, and came up today as well. But the point is that we're engaging on these issues directly, as friends, as partners, and I believe and hope working to make sure that both of our societies continue to get stronger when it comes to our democracies and when it comes to human rights.
Secretary Blinken, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today and for this very candid conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Very good to be with you. Appreciate it.
On the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meet in Delhi, the Russia-Ukraine war remained the single biggest elephant in the room on day one. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar addressed the global impact of the war and stated that while the G20 focused on strengthening multilateralism, the war's impact has largely affected the global south. Meanwhile, Dr. Jaishankar also held a bilateral meeting with his Chinese counterpart, Qin Gang, the first ever since the 2020 Ladakh standoff. Let's take a look at this report by India Today's Geeta Mohan.
The global stage shifted to India, and with that, India sought to bring the global south, the developing world, on international agenda.
It has been our endeavor to ensure that the voice of the global south is heard on the G20 table.
But the Ukraine conflict didn't let that happen as it should have. Tensions between Europe and America on one side and Russia on the other dominated the meeting of G20 foreign ministers in New Delhi. The end result? The world's rich and powerful nations largely sidestepped issues the global south faces. No consensus, no joint communique. The US and its European allies remained engaged in trading diplomatic blows with Russia over its invasion of Ukraine.
Did we fall short of expectations? Why is it called what it is? There were issues, and I think the issues, I would say, very frankly, concerned the Ukraine conflict, on which there were divergences. There was a chair summary because there were differences on the Ukraine issue which we could not reconcile between various parties who held differing positions. Is it, is the conflict impacting the global south? Of course it is. For much of the global south, this is a make or break issue. That the costs of fuel, the cost of food, the cost of fertilizer, the availability of fertilizer, which means next year's food, these are all extremely pressing issues. And if you see some of the countries who were already struggling with debt, who were already impacted by the pandemic, for them, this conflict, the knock-on effects of this conflict coming on top of that, has been really, damaging is a very, very mild word.
The sparring came despite host India urging the G20 to bury its differences and instead focus its attention on the global south.
After years of progress, we are at risk today of moving back on the Sustainable Development Goals. Many developing countries are struggling with unsustainable debt while trying to ensure food and energy security for their people.
On the margins of the two-day international event, India, however, held significant bilaterals with visiting ministers. Among them, with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and China's Qin Gang. At the one-on-one with Chinese Foreign Minister during his visit, border issues dominated the talks. Remember, ties between the two Asian giants have strained since the Ladakh military standoff in May 2020.
The thrust of the meeting was really on our bilateral relationship and the challenges in the bilateral relationship, especially that of peace and tranquility in the border areas.
A leading voice of the developing world, India, on its part, prioritized global food and energy security and development cooperation on world stage, and firmly told China that peace along the border held the key to normalizing ties between the two neighbors. With Geeta Mohan in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Keep watching India Today. The news continues on the other side of this very short break.
All successful people worked hard, nothing comes easily.
Sometimes you need to just cross that mental barrier.
काफी प्रोसेस ओरिएंटेड
difference.
मैं जब दोनों मेडल को ले रहा था और मैं बोल रहा था कि दो ही हमारे पास मेडल है इंडिया में और दोनों आज मेरे हाथ में है.
The very fact that you're opening the India Today conclave with a session on Olympic sport tells me that we've made progress.
सरकार की 0 की नीति है और उन माफियाओं के खिलाफ मिट्टी में मिलाने का काम उनको हमारी सरकार करेगी.
Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath is quite literally turning the mafia to dust. Days after shooting off a warning to gangsters, Bulldozer Baba, as he's been tagged off late, is back. Days after the shocking murder of prime witness Umesh Pal, the crackdown on gangster Atiq Ahmed and his aides has touched top gear. Today in Prayagraj, bulldozers rolled down the streets and targeted Ahmed's aide Khalid Zafar as his 2.5 crore property, according to authorities, was illegal.
ये मकान बनाया गया था जिसका नक्शा पास नहीं था और इसको लेकर के प्रयागराज विकास प्राधिकरण नोटिस देता रहा, लेकिन नोटिस का जवाब नहीं दिया गया. और अब जब प्रशासन ने, प्रयागराज विकास प्राधिकरण ने अवैध निर्माण के साथ साथ उमेश पाल मर्डर केस का क्राइम एंगल भी टटोल लिया है, क्राइम एंगल पता कर लिया है, तो उसके बाद से, क्राइम एंगल पता करने के बाद से अब ये माना जा रहा है कि ये बुलडोजर की कार्रवाई है. यह अभी शुरुआत है उन लोगों की जो अतीक अहमद या उमेश पाल मर्डर केस में मददगार थे, पनाहगार थे.
It was in this two-storied house that the killers of witness Umesh Pal hid after committing the murder on Saturday. Before the house was completely razed down, arms were recovered from inside. Guns and swords were seized, and cops believe all of it belonged to Atiq Ahmed and his gang.
ये उसके घर से ये असलहा मिला है, ये असलहा लेकर के जा रहे हैं. ये कौन के घर से मिला है? घर से मिला. घर से मिला. क्या मिला? ये कौन सी बंदूक? इसके अलावा एक और गन थी अभी, वो भी मिली है. दो मिली है. तलवार भी लेकर एक तलवार मिली है. अच्छा, ये कौन सी, क्या मिला इनके पास? ज्यादा आइडिया नहीं, विदेशी गन है, ज्यादा आइडिया नहीं.
The UP government has meanwhile defended the bulldozer drive, even as the move has been slammed by the opposition. CM Yogi Adityanath made it clear he will continue with this drive, come what may.
हर समस्या के दो समाधान, भाग लो या तो उसे चुनौती के रूप में स्वीकार करते हुए उसका सामना करो, उस प्रकार की कार्य योजना बनाओ और उसके समाधान के स्तर पर पहुंचाओ, जैसे कि 6 वर्ष के अंदर किया गया.
जो अपराधी है और उसके खिलाफ कार्रवाई करना, यह पुलिस प्रशासन का दायित्व भी है. और जो अपराध हुआ है प्रयागराज में श्री उमेश पाल जी की हत्या का, वह साधारण अपराध नहीं है.
हर रोज लॉ एंड ऑर्डर इनका 0 टॉयलेट फेल होता जा रहा है और हर जिले में घटनाएं बढ़ रही है और इनका बुलडोजर पूरी तरह फेल है.
Hello and welcome. You're with us here on Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the headlines tonight. Supreme Court orders review of the capital markets regulatory framework after the Adani stocks fiasco. A 6-member committee will submit its report in 2 months. SEBI asked to widen its probe into the Hindenburg allegations. Markets in the red even as Adani stocks buck the trend. Tech, banks and auto shares drag benchmarks lower. Sensex down 500 points, Nifty down 129 points. Maruti Suzuki prepares for more production pain this month, says semiconductor shortage still hitting operations hard, warns consumers to be ready for a price rise with new pollution norms taking effect from April. It's a big Business Today TV exclusive. The much anticipated revamp in capital gains tax regime will not be happening anytime soon. Finance Ministry officials say mood and sentiment of the market is not right to take a big step. Tech wunderkind Elon Musk terms artificial intelligence dangerous, calls for a regulatory authority to keep a check on it, says he's sorry for his role in its development. In a major decision, the Supreme Court has ordered a review of the regulatory mechanism governing the Indian capital market. The Apex Court, in its verdict on the Adani Hindenburg case, appointed a 6-member committee. Along with SEBI, the committee will conduct a parallel probe into whether the Adani Group or other companies contravened capital market regulations.
For a man who has lost $80 billion this year, the worst is not yet over for Gautam Adani. The billionaire entrepreneur now has not one but 2 high-level probes into his business affairs, and both the probes are monitored by none other than the Supreme Court. The Apex Court passed its judgment after hearing several petitions concerning the loss of investor wealth due to the massive plunge in Adani Group stocks. Total wealth erosion due to sell-off triggered by Hindenburg research report has topped 12 lakh crore rupees last week. In a crucial order, the Supreme Court set up a 6-member committee headed by a retired Supreme Court judge. The committee comprises known industry figures like banker K.V. Kamath and technocrat Nandan Nilekani. The committee has been tasked with providing an overall assessment of the situation, including causes and factors which led to volatility in the security market. The panel will also suggest measures to strengthen investor awareness. It will investigate if there has been regulatory failure in dealing with the alleged contravention of laws in relation to Adani Group and other companies. The panel will also suggest measures to strengthen the statutory and regulatory framework. Meanwhile, capital markets regulator SEBI will continue its existing probe into the Adani Hindenburg case. It has, however, been asked to investigate whether there has been a violation of the minimum shareholding laws. SEBI has also been asked by the Supreme Court to look into whether there has been a failure to disclose transactions with related parties in the Adani case. The regulator will look into whether there was any manipulation of stock prices in contravention of existing laws as well. The court has made it clear that its directions will not limit the contours of the ongoing SEBI investigation. Both the committee and SEBI have been asked to submit their report into Adani's affairs to the Supreme Court in 2 months. Gautam Adani welcomed the probe, tweeting that the order will bring finality in a time-bound manner, adding that the truth will prevail. The markets also welcomed the Supreme Court verdict, sending all 10 Adani Group shares into the green. The flagship Adani Enterprises closed up 2.8%. 5 of the 10 stocks hit the upper circuit. The surge in the group stocks added 30,000 crore rupees to the group market cap.
The next 2 months will be crucial as these reports will be filed before the court. After 2 months, it will be a big question for the Indian markets and the Indian investors as to what really went wrong and what will be done to tighten the system in the country. In New Delhi, with cameraman Ajay Thakur, this is Anisha Mathur for Business Today.
So who are the 6 panel members? Business Today TV has these details for you. The committee is headed by Justice A.M. Sapre, who is veteran jurist, having served as the Chief Justice at the Guwahati High Court and the Manipur High Court. The other jurist on the panel is Justice J.B. Devadhar, who has been the counsel of the Union of India since 1982. He is an expert in tax laws along with constitutional law and other branches of civil law. K.V. Kamath is a veteran Indian banker who started his career with the ICICI Bank and headed it for a long time. He's held several coveted positions, including Chief of the New Development Bank of BRICS countries, Chairman of Infosys, Independent Director at Reliance Industries, and more. O.P. Bhatt is the former Chairman of the State Bank of India and is an independent director on the boards of a variety of multinationals, including Hindustan Unilever, TCS, Tata Steel, and Tata Motors. Nandan Nilekani is the co-founder and chairman of Infosys. He was the founding chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India and held the rank of cabinet minister from 2009 to 2014. Somashekaran Sundaresan, a former journalist, has been a member of several committees set up by the government, SEBI and RBI. He's currently serving on the advisory committee of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India on corporate insolvency and liquidation. So what does the Supreme Court verdict really mean? Does it imply a big change is coming in the regulatory framework? To answer these questions, we're joined by one of the top legal luminaries in India, Ryan Karanjiwala, managing partner of Karanjiwala & Co. Ryan, thanks so much for being with us on the show today. I've been looking forward to first getting your reaction to the Supreme Court's statements today and the fact that they've had to come in on this entire issue. I mean, does this imply that somewhere SEBI was lacking in its investigation, that we've had the apex court step in to probe the manipulation of stocks here?
So before I begin, let me just make one disclosure, which is that Adani is a client of mine. But nevertheless, now I'll answer your question straight away. Yeah. To the question as to whether you felt that the Supreme Court thought that SEBI was lacking in what it was doing, it's a bit of a yes and no answer, because SEBI came to the court and said, look, we are investigating into a host of these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the Supreme Court has said, please continue with the investigation. So that investigation has not been stopped. At the same time, the Supreme Court added 3 other things which they should also investigate into, since they hadn't specifically said they were investigating into it. One was a violation of Rule 19A of the Securities Contract Regulation Act, which is whether the 75% public holding, the 75% private holding regulation has been violated, whether there has been a failure to disclose transactions with related parties, this is all in the Adani context, and whether there was any manipulation of stock prices in contravention of existing laws. So what the Supreme Court first has done is, it has strengthened and tasked SEBI with looking into far more things, or looking into things which it wanted SEBI to look into, in addition to what SEBI was already looking into. That's one. 2, as far as the committee is concerned, the remit of the committee is both micro and macro. While SEBI looks into and reports to the committee and keeps the committee in the loop in what was happening vis-a-vis the Adani group, as far as the committee itself is concerned, they've been asked to give an overall assessment of the situation, including the relevant causal factors, to suggest ways of strengthening investor awareness. So basically, they have been asked to suggest ways to strengthen the institution of stock trading in the country. And they have also been asked to see as to whether in dealing with this, there was any regulatory failure insofar as the alleged contravention of laws by the Adani. That's what has happened.
Sure. Ryan, to what extent is the Supreme Court also taking note of all the PILs that have come in against the group, versus this being a reaction perhaps to the SEBI report? As you just said, it's really expanded the scope. But what is going to be the due process now? Are we going to wait for the SEBI report to come out? Yeah. What happens next?
The SEBI will continue. They will keep the committee in the loop. The committee will look at what SEBI has also said, because they'll have to look at some of the findings. See, in seeing as to whether there's been a regulatory failure or not, they will have to see what findings SEBI comes to. Because if SEBI comes to say yes, there this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. Then the committee, in deciding what the regulatory failure was, will have to look at everything they said. If SEBI says no, everything was kosher, then again the committee will have to look at what SEBI is saying before they come out with their report. So essentially, this is a situation where the Supreme Court has chosen a hand-picked committee, which it has great faith in, and which I think is an excellent committee, and tasked it with the situation of looking at the macro level problems and also seeing as to what SEBI has said as far as the micro level issue is concerned, which is the Adani. And as far as the constitution of the committee is concerned, if I can just venture to say, I don't think they could have found a better committee. And the reason I'm saying it is that this is a situation where everything was being looked at not only within India but also internationally, because this is as you know, it came up from the whole thing started with the Heisenberg report, which is a US-based company, US-based think tank. So essentially, everyone knew from the beginning that whatever happened in India would also be looked at in the rest of the world. Now, when choosing its committee, the Supreme Court has been very, very careful. They have put on the committee 3 people with an international reputation. Nandan Nilekani, internationally known in India and abroad. Mr. O.P. Bhatt, former chairman of the State Bank of India, then the chairman of the Indian Banking Association, and on several international company boards, Tata Motors, Tata Steel, TCS, etc. Then you have K.V. Kamath, who not only headed ICICI Bank, but was also in charge of the BRICS Development Bank. So you have people who have international stature and whose word will be accepted not only within India, but also internationally. As far as the judicial members are concerned, you have a judge of the Supreme Court with huge experience. For example, Justice Sapre has been a judge of 3 separate high courts, a chief justice of 2 other high courts, and in addition to that has been a judge of the Supreme Court. The other judge, Justice J.P. Devdar, is an expert in matters pertaining to SEBI. Somashekaran is a SEBI lawyer and a SEBI expert again in matters pertaining to SEBI. So you have a committee which has high credentials and is very well equipped to deal with the issues at hand and come out with the suggestions for the future. That's how I see it.
Why the entire question around having a sealed envelope around the committee, Ryan? They clearly said that they weren't going to allow a sealed envelope. It had to be transparent. Did we need to go through that whole process?
So that is a question that will sort of, maybe they'll give their report in a sealed envelope, and then it's for the Supreme Court to decide what to do with that sealed envelope. That's